Call this meeting to order. Rick, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. Ann, if you call the roll, please.
Mrs. Boring? Here. Ms. Genesee Zerker? Here. Mr. Reiner?
Here.
Mayor Lucklider?
Here.
Mr. Gerber? Vice Mayor Saleh? Is here.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we have several presentations this evening, and we were going to lead off with a presentation regarding the President's Cup, and Dan Sullivan is going to be first up, I believe. I think he might have a little delegation with him.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here for a few minutes. I'm going to introduce Matt Kaminsky back here with the PGA Tour. Matt is the Executive Director of the President's Cup. So Matt spent 2 years in Australia running the event in Melbourne and now lives in Florida at PGA Tour headquarters. And as we do our work throughout the year, we report into Matt and everyone else at the PGA Tour. So he's here for a couple days of planning. And I thought I'd just give you just a few thoughts related to the Memorial Tournament and then the President's Cup as we enter a critical time for planning. We're 77 days away from the Memorial, and we feel good about where we are. Obviously, one of the things that we're paying attention to mostly with the Memorial Tournament is making sure that folks don't forget the Memorial as we work towards the President's Cup. And we feel very good about how we're progressing. Obviously, we have a lot of work going on at Muirfield Village Golf Club. And at some point over the coming weeks, month and a half, we'd like to extend an invitation out to council to come out and view the grounds. And we got to get a little bit further along with the progress. But with the physical building and how we're preparing for the Memorial Tournament, I know we'll be in good shape to have you out to take a look. As I said, with Memorial, we feel in great shape. Everything that we've been doing over the years with Memorial will continue with the 38th playing. And over the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll start seeing information from a communication standpoint out in the marketplace. We'll start with a volunteer communication in the media about recognizing all those volunteers that mean so much to us and give so much time. And then on April 24th, we will have the Legends Luncheon, which for now 3 years in a row, we've appreciated the support of City of Dublin and contributing to that effort. We will have Jack Nicklaus and Jim Furyk come be a part of that event. And it's one of our efforts to raise awareness and funding for Nationwide Children's Hospital and Nicholas Foundation. We'll continue on May 10th with our benefit concert, which again, City of Dublin is a proud supporter of. And that will be 1 week earlier than what we've had the last couple of years. But we will have a gentleman named Don Felder from the Eagles who will play for us and will again raise money for Nationwide Children's Hospital and the Nicholas Foundation. So we feel very good about where we are just from a community standpoint. We feel good about where we are from a business model, selling tickets, hospitality, and feel that this year will be as good as it has always been. Switching gears to the President's Cup, we're 203 days away from the President's Cup, and there will be a big transition that happens right after the Memorial Tournament. And you'll start seeing it around the end of June, beginning of July. What I call the build-out, the temporary structures that will go with the President's Cup are more significant than we have for the Memorial. So we'll spend the summer building out the golf course and ensuring that when we come to the week of September 30th, we'll be in good shape. And I'll generally say that everything that we've been working on to date is going very well. And we're just progressing as the days go on. There's a lot of work to do, but I'll just give you a few highlights. When it comes to our use of hotels in Dublin, we feel very good. I mean, every hotel is sold out and will continue to be sold out through tournament time. We have a travel program that I've spoken about previously that's doing very well. We're promoting in many different markets. We have over 18 what we call LTOs, licensed travel operators around the world. So some in South Africa and South Korea and Australia and Canada and Mexico that are supporting and promoting the event, which will bring folks into the Dublin community and to enjoy the event. When it comes to the week-long celebration of activities, we're doing well with our opening ceremony downtown, and we're looking forward to working with the City of Dublin and creating that Thursday night special event that we've all talked about for some time now. The dignitaries that will be a part of the event will become reality most likely after the Memorial Tournament. We'll start hearing responses back from all those folks that will be coming in. And we'll work with your staff to ensure that we're creating an environment where you as leadership of Dublin are interacting with those folks throughout the week. So generally speaking, we're doing great. Sales, again, are outpacing what we anticipated. We still have a lot of work to do, but we feel good about where we are. And we have kind of an edict that's come down from Matt Kaminsky's boss and the commissioner of the PGA Tour, and Tim Fincham, has said it has to be the best ever because we expect it to be going to Jack Nicklaus's place, and we have every expectation that it'll meet and succeed those expectations. So that's a quick update. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No pressure.
All right.
Anybody have questions for Dan? Anyone?
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder if Mr. Kaminsky, if you wouldn't mind, since he's come such a long way from Florida, if you wouldn't mind coming up and making a few comments regarding your impressions of Dublin and where we are, in terms of our support for this event.
Oh, absolutely. And first off, on behalf of the PGA Tour, I'd like to thank everyone here, council members, for the support that you guys have already given and will continue to give through the event. When I went down to Australia for 2 years and worked on the event down there, I didn't think that I could come anywhere close to the support that was lent to us in Melbourne. But I have to say that what you guys are doing here and throughout the city of Columbus and Dublin from your standpoint is tremendous. And Sandra and her team and everybody have been just phenomenal. And we look forward to working with you guys. And I have to say that I did not expect that because they do it so well down there, and you guys do it equally as well. And I know that you guys are going to put on a great show. I will want to say that, working with Dan has been great for me, and you have no better ambassador than him. Whenever he's coming to see us down in Ponte Vedra, all he talks about is Dublin. And it's great to hear, and he did that the whole time in Melbourne as well. So we can't thank you enough for the support, and we look forward to making sure that come October 6th at the end of the evening, Tim Fincham saying the same thing, that this was the best President's Cup ever, and that weight will be lifted off Dan's shoulders, which we hope that gets there. So on behalf of the PGA Tour, we are deeply, we're very much great, have so much gratitude to you guys for this, and we're very excited about coming up here and being here at Jack's home course at Muirfield Village. So if there's any questions for me on behalf of the tour, I can answer those as well.
I do have a question for you. With all the fantastic golf courses around the world, how is it that we were picked for this honor?
Well, I mean, you look at that golf course, and it's just a tremendous property. To view a golf tournament, the President's Cup is going to set up so well. It was evident when the Ryder Cup was played here back in '87. It was fantastic. And we saw that, and the course has only matured, and also it's the fans and the people that come out and support sports here and support events like this, as well as Jack. Jack has given so much to this game, and he's given so much to the President's Cup, being captain 4 times, and the support that he's provided the PGA Tour and the President's Cup is very important for us to come and show that. We respect that, and that our support to Jack and to his home course.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you very much for being
Thank
here
you
this
very much,
evening,
Mayor.
Matt.
Really appreciate it.
And you can be sure we're looking forward to it as well. And the excitement will build.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up for presentations is an update from the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau. Director Scott Dring.
Good evening. I'd just like to echo what Matt said. We've been working with Dan and his team for almost 2 years now, and he's been tremendous in making sure Dublin has a seat at the table, that he has our interests at heart on what we're trying to accomplish here in Dublin. So he's been a tremendous force for us as well. I know also, us, in terms of the Bureau, myself, Mayor Leclider, Sandra, we all serve on committees and boards related to the President's Cup, and it's almost a daily basis that we're doing something related to President's Cup. So please know that we're doing our very best to make sure Dublin's interests are represented, and we're doing what we can to promote the city of Dublin in this great event. I'd also like to thank all of you for your vision in supporting the President's Cup. I think the return on investment you're going to see is going to be enormous. And I think it's an event that all of us are going to benefit. Your investment and support, we're going to benefit from years to come after this the President's Cup is over in October, just from an awareness perspective and from the economic impact perspective. On the side of the Dublin Convention Visitors Bureau, our board just finished up a project. We retained a national firm to come and look at our organization as a whole to see if we were doing things right, to see how the destination was as compared to other destinations across the country. Very positive. You'll see in your packet kind of an outline of his results. It's always good to get a perspective from outside the city of Dublin and outside of this central Ohio area as well to kind of see how you're doing things. One thing that did come up that continues to be something we continue to work on is wayfinding for visitors when they come to our town. I know we're working with Marcia in the city. There's, I believe, a wayfinding analysis in the works, and as our board has mentioned, we'll do whatever we can to support you guys along that effort as well. Also in your packet is our annual report. I won't bore you with the details, but you can kind of see quickly some of the things that we accomplished last year. A couple of the big things, obviously, several new events we secured here with your help, the Top Gun football camp, and those folks are actually in town this week to do another site visit and meeting with the chiefs and the police in Washington Township, preparing for that event in June and July as well. Overall, the market here in the travel and tourism industry did very well last year. Our occupancy was up 3.5%, and our average daily rate was up about 4.5% versus the previous year. The average person in the city of Dublin is spending about $96 for their room per night, which is the highest level we've seen since 2008. So it's all good. It's a lot better than we were several years ago. We're projecting small incremental increases for the upcoming year as well. As you know, we've always been successful in the last few years promoting our brand, the Irish is an Attitude brand. And we went and did a lot of research this past year to see if the brand was ever having a positive impact, if visitors still saw it as unique and a perspective to visit the city of Dublin. And we found that it was. You know, it really provides us a competitive advantage over our competitors in terms of luring visitors to Dublin versus our other competitive set across the region. And one thing that the research told us, although the brand was doing very well, visitors still wanted more Irish experiences apart from St. Patrick's Day and the Dublin Irish Festival. So we took that research and we created a program called the Irish is an Attitude Enhancement Program, which included two elements. One element was to gather all the current businesses in town that or offer some type of Irish experience in town, the Halfpennies, the Brazen Heads, you know, many companies like that, actually 15 businesses in Dublin, package it, promote them, and say, okay, here's an experience you can have 365 days a year to visit. So that's one component of it. The other one is creating a new unique grant program that we've had from your help, and thank you for offering a bed tax grant in support of this program. But the grant basically offers monies to local Dublin businesses to create new Irish product, new Irish experiences. We launched it back in January, hoping just to have a few businesses step up. We actually had 37 Irish experiences request grant funds for the program. So tremendous success. Obviously, we couldn't accommodate all of them. The four first grantees have been Historic Dublin Business Association, Mezzo, the Embassy Suites, and Teikuti, are the four businesses that are doing new Irish experiences here in the next 6 months or so. In your packet, you'll see a rack card that we've created again to promote that. Our goal, obviously, is to populate the community with these unique Irish experiences so when visitors come here, they have a great experience, they spend lots of money, stay in our hotels, and come back for more and more in the future. Obviously, not everything we do is Irish. You know, that's just a unique thing that we try to sell our city with. We've had a lot of new business opportunities come in town the last few months since the last time we spoke. The American Milking Shorthorn Society will be holding its 2006 conference in Dublin. They selected Dublin over several Midwest cities across the Midwest. The Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence will hold their conference here in June of 2001. I want to bring our 2013. I want to bring that up because it's an example of us not being able to fulfill that conference because there was no hotel space. So we had to be creative We actually are going to hold that event at OCLC and shuttle people back and forth from the hotels and still, reap those benefits. So our hotels sometimes are doing very well. You have to find other ways to host some of these conferences as well. Finally, the Ohio High School Athletic Association state championships. We are again sponsoring and have a unique partnership with them. As you know, a lot of the state championships are held in downtown Columbus, Schottenstein Center, across central Ohio. Our goal is to get a lot of those people to come visit the city of Dublin, spend money here, stay in our hotels, visit our restaurants, and so forth. We've had a lot of success. The promotion that we'll be doing is going to have a lot of in-game announcements, public address announcements. It'll be on the radio coverage. It's in their program, all of which encourages people to visit Dublin while they're attending that event as well. I can tell you the next 2 weekends. Next weekend is the girls' state championship, basketball. The following weekend is the boys' state championship, and we'll have 14 teams staying in Dublin those 2 weekends that'll be participating in those 2 state championships. So you'll see a lot of high school folks running around town here the next few weekends. That's a quick update. As always, we appreciate your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Scott, landing the milking conference is utterly fantastic.
I have no comment on that. I agree with you.
Couldn't let it go.
I know, too easy.
Just too good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested how Mezzo's is having an Irish Attitude family dinner. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, and that's a great example of how, a business that maybe is not Irish in a sense is kind of adapting its menu a little bit to begin to create an Irish experience. They actually are creating an Irish fare menu. They just hired a gentleman that is from Ireland, a chef, that knows a lot of menu items. They're actually creating a priced menu that includes all kind of Irish food that you would expect on a good menu, including Guinness and all that kind of good stuff. And it's a family event that will include balloons and magicians and Irish dancers, and it'll be held the third Sunday of every month, I believe, for the next 6 months, and it opens up St. Patrick's Day this Sunday. So it's a great example of how, a company looked at the experience, thought it was a great opportunity to drive some business for their business, and adapted the program to fit their needs.
It looks like fun.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say that I quickly was glancing through your concluding recommendations here from your evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of exciting, really, to look at the next generation of your organization. And certainly I would encourage, I really like I like a lot of the recommendations, but one of them about that we're the destination and not hooking on to somebody else now.
Right.
And certainly the President's Cup and the Memorial Tournament are examples of that, or the Irish Festival.
Right.
I hope that if there are ways that the city can move to that next phase of partnership with you as you work towards whichever ones of these you're looking at implementing, I would certainly encourage us to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great, Scott.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on, we have a couple proclamations, and we're going to begin with a proclamation for Senior Master Sergeant Chuck Rudy. If you would come forward, sir, and the chief, and any other honored guests, if they're here. Chief, I don't, maybe it would be appropriate, do you want to make words afterward, or make some comments afterwards?
I can say something real quick.
Yeah, just as an introduction, if you would.
This is Officer Chuck Rudy. He's been an officer with our department since 1997. And Chuck's been around a long time, and I've been around longer. And I thought I really knew Chuck well. We've worked together. We went to New Orleans together in 2005. But I really didn't realize the extent of Chuck's commitment to this country and to his community until I attended his recent retirement from the Air National Guard. And I'll be honest with you, I was awed. There was a steady stream of people that got up on that stage and sung the praises of Chuck Rudy, or Senior Master Sergeant Chuck Rudy. Sorry. It was just fantastic. And to a man and to a woman, when they got up on that stage. Officers, non-commissioned officers, enlisted personnel, every one of them, all they talked about was the character of this gentleman and what he meant to them as a member of the military and a supervisor and a mentor to a lot of them. So we thought it was fitting when when I saw that, I thought it would be fitting to ask council and the mayor to have a proclamation to honor Senior Master Sergeant Rudy and all his accomplishments. He indicated at one point that he counted up all his time overseas in his service, and he spent over 11 and a half years overseas with 4 combat deployments. Is that right? 4 combat deployments. So if whatever you're doing on Friday, just remember it's going to be Chuck Rudy Day. So we'll hand out balloons. And we also have one of Chuck's colleagues here. Am I saying this right? Command Sergeant Major? Command Chief, excuse me. Command Chief Wallace, who also would like to make a presentation after we're done with Chuck's proclamation.
Great, thank you. If you'd step up here with me, I want to get you front and center so we... No. Just right there. All right. You're on TV. We're streaming live. And I have this proclamation to read, and it states as follows. Whereas Senior Master Sergeant Charles J. Rudy recently retired from the Ohio Air National Guard after 11 years of active duty in the United States Air Force and 13 years in the Ohio Air National Guard. And whereas Senior Master Sergeant Rudy's last assignment was as the First Sergeant for the 121st Security Forces Squadron as the vital link and advisor to the commander for all unit enlisted members of the squadron. And whereas Senior Master Sergeant Rudy served a total of 11 and a half years overseas during his service to this nation with assignments in Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Okinawa, and England. Senior Master Sergeant Rudy was deployed to numerous war zones throughout his career, including to Saudi Arabia during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm as a machine gunner with a quick reaction force, to Afghanistan from January 2002 to August 2003 for Operation Fundamental Justice and Operation Enduring Freedom, to Iraq in 2006 and 2007 for Operation Iraqi Freedom, and to Kandahar, Afghanistan in 2011 for Operation Enduring Freedom. And whereas Senior Master Sergeant Rudy was honored during his military career with numerous awards and medals, including the 121st Air Refueling Wing First Sergeant of the Year Award in 2010 and 2011, Ohio Air National Guard First Sergeant of the Year in 2011, the Meritorious Service Medal with 2 devices, Aerial Achievement Medal, Air Force Commendation Medal with 2 devices, Air Force Achievement Medal, Air Force Good Conduct Medal with 3 devices, Air Reserve Forces Meritorious Service Medal with 3 devices, National Defense Service Medal with 1 device, Southwest Asia Service Medal with 2 devices, Afghanistan Campaign Medal with 1 device, Iraqi Campaign Medal with 1 device, War on Terror Expeditionary Medal, War on Terrorist Service Medal, United States Air Force Expeditionary Service with 2 devices, Armed Forces Reserve Medal with M and 4 devices, Small Arms Expert with 1 device, the NATO Service Medal, Kuwait Liberation Medal, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait Liberation Medal, Government of Kuwait, and the Ohio Commendation with 1 device. And whereas since 1997, Senior Master Sergeant Rudy has served the citizens of the city of Dublin as a police officer, and he continues this service and commitment to our citizens today. Now therefore, I, Timothy A. Lechleiter, Mayor of Dublin, Ohio, on behalf of the Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, March 15, 2013, as Senior Master Sergeant Charles J. Rudy Day in the city of Dublin, in honor of his 24 years of military service to his country and in recognition of his ongoing commitment to the city of Dublin as a police officer with the Dublin Division of Police. Congratulations. I think I know why you're not in uniform this evening. I don't think you need some help with all those medals. That's great. You want to say a few words?
if you don't mind. First of all, thank you, Mayor-elect Leiter, appreciate it, City Council. Hey, listen, my name is Eric Wallace. I'm the Command Chief of the 121st Air Refueling Wing, and I just wanted to come in this evening, and actually came in here to help Chuck recognize the City of Dublin. And reality is, without the kindness and the support and the professionalism that the City of Dublin has shown him, Chuck couldn't go do all those things. You know, as the functional manager of First Sergeants, as the Command Chief, it's my responsibility to make sure that First Sergeants are able to focus on taking care of people at the home station. But it's really nice when you have an employer like Chuck Rudy's got in the City of Dublin. You know, back in 2002, Chuck and I were moving prisoners from Afghanistan to Guantanamo Bay. And, you know, I heard a lot of horror stories from my fellow airmen about employers who were not supportive, who were, you know, busy filling jobs and making alternative plans because they didn't like the fact that their person was serving in the Air National Guard or the Army National Guard or what have you. And the reality is, all I ever heard from Chuck all the way back in 2002 was, my goodness, what a great place I work, the City of Dublin. And it truly is an honor. And the reality is, tonight, I don't even know Chuck knew that he was going to get a proclamation. I knew he wanted to come in here and make a very nice presentation to the City of Dublin, because while Chuck was taking care of us, you were taking care of him, and you were taking care of his wife, Becky, in the back of the room. And as the mayor said so accurately, a couple of weeks ago, we had an award ceremony for Chuck, and my goodness, it was well-deserved. And we're going to miss him greatly, and I'm sure the city is going to be excited to have him back in a full-time capacity. And he's been a dear friend of mine. And again, I just want to come over here and help him recognize you. And if I could, just for a moment, if I could get Miss Grigsby, if you could sneak around that desk for a moment and come over here to me, would you do that? You know, I hope I'm not out of place here, Mayor. Chuck's asked me if I wanted to recognize some people, I could do that. And in the military, when somebody does great things, when somebody does something excellent, we coin them. And I have my own Command Chief coin. As the Command Chief, I give coins to airmen when they do great things. And Officer Chuck Rudy says, you do great things for him. You lead great things. He talked about the Veterans Day luncheons you put together and the fact that there are multiple employees of the City of Dublin that are in the armed forces or have been in the armed forces. And he said it's your guidance and leadership that has made this a comfortable place for a person of the armed forces to come work. So I want to give you one of my coins. So, ma'am, thank you very much. Thank you for your service. I appreciate you very much. And I have, if you don't mind, I have one more. And if I could have the chief out here for just a moment, sir. And ironically enough, this is a nice twofold thing for me having Chief von Eckersberg. I got to say that right. I'm a school teacher, and I teach high school law enforcement. Chucky and I, we have kind of parallel lives, and every other year I bring my juniors and seniors up here, so Chief Eckersberg kind of rolls out the red carpet for me. But just the same thing I said about, make sure I say that last name right, Grigsby, Miss Grigsby. You know, the same thing can be said about the chief. Chief von Eckersberg has allowed Chuck to raise his hand and volunteer to do things and to go out and take care of airmen. So I too want to give you one of my coins as well. So, sir, again, a job well done, and thank you so much for supporting our Chuck Rudy. We greatly appreciate you at the 121st Air Refueling. And with that, I'm gonna pass this off to Chuck and get out of the way. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you all very much.
I definitely won't take a lot of time because I know there's some things, some business to move on to. But Mr. Mayor and council members, Ms. Grigsby, sorry, I'm a little choked up a little bit. I wasn't expecting this, that's for sure, because the whole idea was for me to come here and give something to the city. You know, I'm not going to bore you with what all the city does, but I can tell you it's a lot for the members in the armed forces. We have people in the reserves, in the Guard, the Army, the Navy, Marines, Air Force. I mean, we have them all over. And no matter where we go and what we do, we always sing the praises of the City of Dublin. And all the other people in our unit say, well, when do I get to go work for the City of Dublin? Because I can tell you, we've heard some horror stories, you know, from community relations that talks to veterans during Veterans Day, Veterans Week, and highlight them on TV, on Dub TV, to the veterans luncheons, to the citizen and city council driven grounds of remembrance. You You know, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for veterans. So when we see all the different things and the benefits, you know, everybody likes paying benefits. And when you know you're coming back to that, that's pretty awesome. Instead of coming back thinking, where am I going to, you know, am I going to have a job? All we expect is to have our jobs and to be able to come back and not be hassled by employers because we're in the Guard. I can tell you go way above and beyond what it takes for a city to let veterans know that you care. So we really appreciate it. This is a First Sergeant Diamond Award. These, I can tell you I've only given 3 others of these out. These are awards that we don't give out lightly. It's not like the Lucky Duck Award saying, your turn, come on up. We don't do that. We give these out when you genuinely deserve it. So we greatly appreciate everything that you do as a city. It says, for your incredible support of city employees' service in the National Guard and Reserves. We greatly appreciate it, so I like speaking for the rest of the reserve component that's out there. I asked city managers to come to my retirement so I could present this, and Ms. Grigsby was out of town, and General McDaniel actually came, instead of coming in a suit, he came in uniform to represent the National Guard, and actually presented myself and Becky with, my wife Becky, with something from the city, something we totally did not expect, and it was a big deal. And I can tell you that the members of the unit were in awe. So anyway, to the City of Dublin, the First Sergeant Diamond Award for making a difference and making us relevant in the city. We appreciate it.
Congratulations.
You know, it's pretty amazing the people that we have working for us, and that's just one more example. You know, we're very proud, and thank you for your service.
You know, Tim, there's a service protocol with when you've been coined, and the rule is, Marcia, that you always carry that with you, and if another person who's been coined comes up to you and asks for your coin, you have to show them within 15 seconds. Otherwise, you have to buy. And that's true. That's true.
Well, thank you all very much. Certainly a proud moment for the City of Dublin and Dublin City Council as well. And as you stated so eloquently, Sergeant Rudy, you know, what a testament it is to our staff, you know, at all levels, you know, to support those that serve in the armed services. You know, certainly the law requires that, but we go above and beyond, and that's certainly City Council's expectation. And we know it's not considered an effort, but a privilege to support these men and women that serve in the armed services. We appreciate it. Marcia, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, since the mayor mentioned it, that we are able to provide the support to those who serve because of what City Council allows us to do, from just the expectation that that is what we will do, and then providing the funding, the necessary staffing, and able to cover. And I'd just like to thank Chuck and to recognize him, because he truly is a person of character. And you're right, we're very fortunate that we have individuals like that that work for the City of Dublin.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up is a proclamation for Business Appreciation Day. And with us here this evening, Jeremy, you're going to join me at the podium, and you have some guests. I'm told that Bruce Dewey, the manager of Buffalo Wild Wings, I'm assuming here in Dublin and elsewhere, and Chaz Fertel from the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. If you all join me here at the podium.
Good evening. Each and every year, as you know, this city's economic development celebrates Business Appreciation Week on or about St. Patrick's Day, depending how the calendar falls. This year's no different. We will be doing so on Friday, visiting 6 individual businesses and providing them Irish band for about 30 minutes and giving them some recognition for their investment and interest in the city. Also, as you all know, recently we relocated the Dublin Entrepreneur Center, and that has been successful for the past 5 years. And we also want to recognize some important partners in that. And tonight I have Bruce and Chaz with us, and I'd like to recognize them and allow Chaz to speak even more specifics on Bruce and Buffalo Wild Wings' commitment from the beginning and continued commitment to the Entrepreneur Center and the program that we provide there each and every day. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chaz.
Thank you, Jeremiah, Mayor Licklider, council members, and Marcia. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to share with you. As you all know, we have a very, very successful Entrepreneur Center. Some recognize it as the finest in the state of Ohio, if not in the United States. We currently have 85 companies that we call home to in our facility over at the new Metro Place location. And for the last 5 years, Buffalo Wild Wings has been a sponsor and a collaborator with that facility. And as we all know, our facility's been a public-private partnership from the very beginning. And the success of those public-private partnerships enables us to provide those extra services and those extra resources that those small businesses can enjoy, not only at our facility, but all the visitors that come on a regular basis to enjoy the events that we have and the resources that we provide. Buffalo Wild Wings, every month since we opened the facility, twice a month has fed our guests for all of our events at 2 separate weeks. And on an annual basis, I can't even calculate the number, but I estimate it in excess of $6,000 to $9,000 a year worth of complimentary food that they give us on a retail level. And it's business partners like Buffalo Wild Wings, who's such an integral part that is invested in our facility that really makes us shine with those employers. And so for Bruce to be the current general manager representative of Buffalo Wild Wings, it's my pleasure to stand here with him and stand next to Mayor Licklider when he provides this proclamation. Thank you.
Just doesn't want to say a few words. Oh, okay. All right. Well, who knew? That's really neat. That's really neat. I wouldn't have expected that Buffalo Wild Wings would have been such a supporter of the deck, but that's really neat. That's really great. Can you tell me how long you've been manager?
I've been with the company about 6 years. At this location for almost 6 months now.
Okay. How's everything?
Excellent.
All right.
Come visit us.
All right. All right. Maybe if we get out of here in enough time. Okay. All right. You want to all step forward here? The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the vast majority of new jobs created in Dublin have come from existing businesses within our community, and whereas Dublin's continued economic vitality is the result of high-quality development supported by the city's existing business community, and whereas Dublin is proud that over 3,000 companies have chosen to make Dublin their home, and whereas the City of Dublin is a beneficiary of exemplary service by nearly 60,000 employees within our community, and whereas Dublin businesses have contributed significantly to the overall economic well-being of Dublin, the Central Ohio region, and the state of Ohio, and whereas the city expresses its sincere appreciation to all Dublin businesses and employees for choosing to work and create in Dublin, and whereas the city invites all Dublin businesses and employees to celebrate the Irish spirit present throughout this community, not only on St. Patrick's Day, but throughout the year. So now, therefore, I, Timothy A. Licklider, Mayor of the City of Dublin, Ohio, on behalf of Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, March 15th, 2013, as Dublin Business Appreciation Day in the City of Dublin, celebrating the continued success of our businesses. We can applaud. And last but not least, we have Ohio Parks and Recreation Association Awards. I'm assuming Fred's going to be a part of that presentation. What do I do, Fred?
Good evening. We just wanted to let council know at this year's annual awards ceremony at Ohio Parks and Recreation that city received 3 awards for 2 first-place awards, one for Thaddeus Kosciuszko Park in their historical and cultural interpretation, then one for Healthy Dublin, and then a second-place award for Safety City. So it was a nice award ceremony, and it's always good to be recognized by your peers in the field, and we were. Be glad to answer any questions about it.
Fred, this Youth and Family Awards, Youth and Family Programs Award, what was that for?
The Safety City Plus, and that's about the extent of my knowledge of Safety City Plus.
Okay. Okay.
Matt Ehrman is home with a sick child tonight, so he would have been better versed in 2 of the 3 awards,
Okay.
including that one.
So this is recognition that's bestowed upon communities on an annual basis, I guess?
Yes, again, it's judged by those in the Parks and Rec field itself, and so there's various categories and these categories here were the specific to the one for park that had to do with more park design. The other 2 was more programming type of awards. But it's a competitive process, again, judged by our peers in the field, and this year Dublin was selected for 2 first place categories, and then the second place for the Safety City Plus. So
great, very good. Well,
it is.
Congratulations to you and your staff.
Thank you.
You didn't. Go ahead, Kathy.
Fred, on the memo you provided us, it says this was 1,400 different park and recreation agencies?
Yes, yes.
All up for the same awards?
No, this is
Okay.
that's the membership. I don't know how many entries there were per category.
Okay.
But it was definitely all categories had first, second, third, and honorable mention or whatever. So, but these were the ones that we were deemed to excel in.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, that's very impressive. Moving on to that part of our agenda, where citizens may comment on items not on this evening's agenda. We have one individual signed up, and that would be Mr. Eric Kraus. If you'd like to come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Eric Kraus, and I live at 8606 Kirk Hill Court. I'm here to present to City Council a suggestion for creating a Dublin-Scioto water trail along the Scioto River. A water trail is where the waterway itself is a trail. It is not a land-based trail that runs alongside the waterway. During my surveys of Dublin residents, I encountered residents who had already paddled kayaks or canoes from the dam to downtown Dublin, and I also heard from a greater number of residents who would like to do activities of the same type on the river. I took the input from our residents that, to my knowledge of water trails, to come up with a Dublin-Scioto water trail concept. So I hope you have a chance to please read the 2 pages I've handed to Clerk of Council to explain the water trail proposal or concept. After you have read the proposal, please think about the synergy the water trail would create with the Dublin parks along the trail, along the river, and other projects such as river boxes and even businesses in Old Dublin as well as the new district. I've already presented the water trail concept to PRAC, and they were all very excited about the concept and thought it was a great idea. Although not all of our residents would use the water trail, it feels as though enough would to merit consideration by council and staff. The water trail concept would give Dublin the ability to offer even greater diversity in its outdoor recreational activities for its residents. And the Scioto River is a great amenity, and we should take better advantage of its presence. Thank you.
Okay, it appears that Mr. Kraus is the only one signed in. We need to move now to the consent agenda. These things are acted upon by a single motion and vote of council. If there's any council member who wishes to remove an item, please speak now.
I would like to remove ordinance 1913 for just some clarifications.
Okay.
Minor.
I'm assuming, do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to wait till after?
When it's due.
The regular order, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No regular.
Put it back in order then.
Gotcha.
On
Okay.
the agenda.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? Okay. We have a motion to approve the actions of the 7 items listed on the consent agenda.
So moved.
And could you please call the vote?
Sure. Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Okay. And we have the second reading, public hearing of ordinance 17-13.
Authorizing appropriation of a 0.155 acre more or less storm sewer easement at 7460 Dublin Road from Matthew C. Wickline.
Mr. Hammersmith, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Mayor, members of council, there is no change on this particular item since the staff report at first reading, and we have not had any contact from Mr. Wickline based on prior phone conversations, nor the good faith offer letter that was sent to him dated September 6th of last year. So with that, staff does recommend your adoption of this ordinance this evening so that we can move forward with this acquisition.
Any questions, comments?
Excuse, I did have a question. So based on what you just stated, so you have had no further communication since September?
No, I had actually had 3 different phone conversations with Mr. Wickline, asking if he had any questions, any clarifications, and he said he had the documents, he had made some notations, and he was going to look at them and get back with me, and I would never hear back from him.
So if I might ask for legal clarification then, assuming we pass this evening, what is the next step in this particular case when there's been no formal agreement?
This would authorize us to go to court and actually file the documents to complete the acquisition so that we can keep the project on mark.
Thank you.
I would like to reiterate something I had said earlier, that the staff has been diligent as far as trying to work with Mr. Wickline, so it's been a hard process for them, and this is about the only step we can take at this time. It's been years. So in that light, I will obviously approve it.
Any other questions or comments? And if you call for the vote, please.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Ordinance 18-13.
Amending sections 32.60 through 3261, repealing sections 3270 through 3278 of the codified ordinances of the City of Dublin, combining the duties and functions of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission and the Community Services Advisory Commission into a newly configured Community Services Advisory Commission.
Thank you. Who was going to comment on this?
Yeah, I think Fred was.
This is a follow-up of discussion we've had about the combining the 2 of the commissions into one, and I think that the council packet before you, the report, should answer any questions, and be glad to try to answer that it failed to handle.
Thank you, Fred. Any questions or comments from council?
I have one. We talk about the task force and the formation of possible task force, and it's going to be under the oversight of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, or I guess I'm reading off the old one. Who is to appoint those task force members? Because they may recommend to council the formation of a task force, which shall operate under the direction and oversight of the Community Service Advisory Commission. and then it tells us what a task force shall mean. The council will determine the period of time. So the question is then, who selects the task force members?
Kathy, which section is that you're reading from?
3265, it's about the last page. In fact, it is the last page on mine.
3270.
Well, I don't know which one I'm reading off of. Did I get the number right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading it right now. I mean,
Okay.
if, I'm just wondering why it's even, this section is even saying the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission.
Yeah, and actually.
Given that that their passage of this ordinance would eliminate the Parks and Recreation. So it's.
Yeah, and what was attached,
I think that's the
what's
existing.
applies is what's highlighted, and it's at the top of that page. It says highlighted text below designates duties and functions incorporated into ordinance 1813. So the highlighted information was what was included based on some feedback that we had received at the last meeting. And actually 3278 task force, that's been eliminated. That was all part of the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission, and that's, if you look at the page or two before, in the back, you can see where that's all been redlined, or blue-lined, I guess, to be eliminated.
Okay.
3265 existed in the prior existing.
Yes.
It already exists in the
Okay.
Community Services Code.
Okay. So that section is totally eliminated, is what you're
Yes.
telling me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. There are so many different red lines, blue lines, yellow lines. So I must have gotten the one line that was not totally.
Yeah, the last two pages were added and highlighted, in the yellow that's highlighted is what's been incorporated into the current and proposed legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Ann, if you call for the vote, please.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Nissy Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Salee? Yes. Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 19-13.
Amending Chapter 99 of the City of Dublin Codified Ordinances. Introduction.
Thank you. We probably need an introduction. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Langworthy.
I'm not sure if you just had questions, or we do have a short presentation if you'd like to hear it. Chris Miller is here from Ice Miller to go over some of the technical details.
Which one are we reading?
This is 1913.
This is the wireless
One that
This is the
Kathy.
one you-
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello.
No, Kathy, on.
Maybe these are just they probably are clarifications. On page 2, is there any definition of never mind, let's pass that one. Page 10. Back to my red line. Are all conditional uses submitted to planning and zoning? You
I'm
have,
sorry,
you know,
page
'cause
10?
you have all these, I couldn't understand that table. Are all the conditional uses always submitted to Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes.
Okay? And on 18, page 18, we talk about signs and the limitations of those signs. Why would there be a need for any other sign other than the, post a sign that tells the emergency number? Since all of the signs should comply, would there be any need for another sign?
I think the only reason we have signs on there is to allow, so that we know who the operator is. We have a telephone number we can contact if there's a problem we need to contact someone for. That's the only purpose of that sign.
Well, it says one sign shall be posted, and then you go to the bottom, and it says all other signs shall comply with, and I'm curious why you even have the statement that all other signs, when you already say one sign should be posted with the emergency number.
Historically, we've had some issues with signs at some of the sites. They've been very confusing, and a lot of times they're warning signs or emergency signs, and we have issues with people mowing grass near them, and sometimes they indicate there are negative effects, which are really supposed to be because of OSHA on top of the tower or closer to the antenna. So that's why we've indicated that in the future we want one sign for contacting and emergency purposes, and we don't want any other signs because the general public might misunderstand them and they're inappropriate.
So any other signs would be warning signs?
If they are appropriate and required. Otherwise, the signage should be limited to the one sign as dictated by the city with the contact information as approved.
Okay, then what I'm hearing you say and what I'm reading are somewhat confusing, because you tell me about the one sign, and then you go down to say all other signs should comply with the requirements of Chapter 153. So if I come in with another sign and it complies with the requirements, that's what I'm asking.
And that's the city's sign ordinance. So any other signs outside of that specific notification would have to comply with the city's sign ordinances, which 153.
Okay, I thought I heard you say there was only one sign they were allowed.
Correct. Under normal circumstances, we will have one sign, which will be that emergency sign. If someone wanted to post an additional sign, it would have to comply with the city's sign ordinance or code.
Okay, so they can have more than one sign as long as it complies.
They would have to get approved, right? Correct.
Okay. Steve, curiously, how would it comply considering the structure? Does it matter if what the sign is for?
What would be the purpose of the sign? How would it comply?
No, when you talk about signs and it says it complies with the Chapter 153, is there, generally you have to have a sign based on the size of the building or things like that?
Correct. You would have to comply with the city's standard sign code, and to be honest with you, without looking at the specifics of the individual site, we wouldn't know what the requirements would be.
Probably wouldn't.
Correct. It could certainly be a prohibition, depending on what they were asking for.
Okay. You'll be happy to know that I went through this twice, so I eliminated some questions. You have in here that there's no further additional, when it goes to BZA, it's page 2930. When it goes to BZA for an appeal, that additional testimony is not appropriate. And then on page 30, when it goes to city council, that rule does not apply. Is that correct? If it gets appealed then to city council, they may bring in new information?
I'll go ahead and answer this one. For appeals, when that's presented to the Board of Zoning Appeals, that decision is based on, it's limited to what information was available to the administrative official or whoever made that decision at the time the decision was made. So the Board of Zoning Appeals is using that same information to consider whether that appeal was or whether that decision was made appropriately. When that goes to City Council, the council can review additional information, and Jennifer can correct me if that's wrong.
And I believe that's consistent with what we did in the Bridge Street District, so that you would have latitude, since you would be the final body before it could conceivably go to court, to give you a little more flexibility.
That's correct.
Okay, so that one, you cannot, and the other, when it gets to that rank, you can.
That's correct.
I am assuming that temporary always means 30 days. Whenever I see the word temporary structure or temporary this, I assume that always means 30 days.
I wouldn't assume that. With the temporary section of the wireless ordinance, we looked at a couple of different scenarios in which different lengths of time might be appropriate, whether you have, an act of God, some kind of weather event, whether it's a special event like the Memorial Tournament or the President's Cup, or some other type of unspecified event. We'd look at the amount of time that would be appropriate for that particular application and factor that in. And the section dealing with the temporary wireless provisions has a number of those scenarios listed out.
Disregarding those.
Sure.
The other, like, they're allowed to have a temporary whatever it says for 30 days unless it can be renewed. There are several references to a temporary. I understand the.
Are you referring to a particular section
Well,
under
it's
9910?
page 36, General A, is one, but I noticed it all through. I mean, there's other references to temporary, but that's the one that, you know.
Okay.
And I understand what you're saying, but for the most part, it's 30 days, right?
Typically, there's a couple that are 14 days, and then a couple that are, you know, if the city, for example, last summer, 2 summers ago maybe, when we painted the water tanks, we had to remove the wireless facilities that were on top. So that I think we approved those for 90 days just to make sure that they'd have time to make those improvements before they were replaced back on the water tower. So we'd look at, you know, some of those specific circumstances, but generally it would most likely be 30 days unless otherwise specified in here. But we can look to make sure that it's clear which time periods apply to each specific temporary event.
Okay, I think it's somewhat clear. I just wanted to verify on
Sure.
that. On page 34, that I'm kind of confused about the process because the Board of Zoning Appeals denies it, and then they're allowed to have a public hearing before the same BZA. Is that how that works?
Let's see. So there's the appeals process that is reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that is a public meeting. There's the notices and everything that go out as typical to an administrative appeal procedure. Not sure if there's another specific section that you're referring to.
An opportunity. It says, following and determined by the Board of Zoning Appeals that the tower has been abandoned, the city may take whatever action. If the removal is appealed, so that means a first appeal, at the very first repeal? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you also notice in the public hearing that public notice is given out for public. Is there any time, not that it's, you know, needs to be in here, but whenever we do authorize a tower or communication center to be built or erected, do we ever let the property owners know that this is going to happen?
The property owners are required to sign off on the application form itself, even if it's just new antennas, just to make sure that they're obviously aware of the application being filed. In a lot of cases, actually, the city is the property owner, given our,
Right.
you know, water towers and so forth. So we do make sure that they're aware.
Thank you. That's
Sure.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll have the second reading on March 25th. Moving on then to the first reading of ordinances, beginning with ordinance 20-13.
Amending various portions of Chapter 96 Parks and Recreation of the Dublin Codified Ordinances.
Introduction, please. Thank you. Mr. Hahn?
This one would amend most sections, actually, of Chapter 96. It's got a lot of long overdue housekeeping within this chapter, as well as addressing some issues that have come up in more recent years. So it's been reviewed over time by PRAC, once upon a time by legal, and various divisions, departments within the city. So glad to answer any questions tonight.
I have a question, if I may. Fred, I was curious in here, I thought that we had talked about making our ponds catch and release fishing only.
That idea was brought up. What we think is better is to make sure that we have the right to post special regulations on an as-needed basis, and that could be pond by pond type of regulations. There are times when it's really to the pond's benefit for certain fish to be removed, like bluegills become overpopulated within ponds. So I think when we had talked about the fishing regulations, you know, we definitely wanted to get on the books the means of catching, where previously you could net, shock, whatever methods. There was, and this makes it very specific that it's just a traditional hook and line methods. So back to if we thought a certain pond should be catch and release, or certain species should be catch and release, we clearly would be allowed to do so on a pond-by-pond basis, but this is just kind of the blanket, kind of the blanket regulations for all city Dublin ponds.
Okay. I guess it's kind of backwards of what I thought that we had said we wanted to do, because this is going to take an awful lot of monitoring by staff, isn't it? To figure out which pond is overfished or underfished, or which species is going to be caught, and then
Really,
for regulation purposes, or I should say enforcement purposes, how would that be enforced? You know, somebody's going to have to sit there and physically watch the bluegill come out and the bass be left in. It just seems cumbersome on the city.
I think if we really had an issue with traditional hook and line taking too many fish out, we would think differently of the verbiage. Right now, we seem to have citywide pretty good balance of fish populations. We've, by and large, all the ponds have had an initial stocking, and then natural reproduction has ensued afterwards. It's been pretty rare for us to have a need to come back and restock ponds that have after the initial stocking. Again, I think one of our biggest fears of overharvest was not by traditional methods of fishing, but by the seining or netting of fish, which has been reported in the city before.
Okay.
So that was the idea of having the verbiage the way it is.
Okay, and how do we keep track of the pond, what is in which pond, besides what we knew was in there from the initial stock?
Well, I mean, our main method is by, you know, the initial stocking records. Now, there's most definitely some fish that just do better, and you know, here in a few months when they're on the nest, we can kind of tell which is actually having the natural reproduction, I guess. And there's definitely certain fish species that we've put into the ponds that there's no evidence that they were that they've taken hold in that pond. By and large, most of the ponds are the more traditional warm water fishes in Ohio, the largemouth bass, the bluegills, and the catfishes, with some other, you know, occasional perch striped bass out there, but by and large, most of our ponds have natural reproduction of largemouth bass, bluegill, and catfish.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Thanks.
One other question.
John.
I understand that permitting fishing without a license in the city ponds, for residents or for anyone, or how does that?
It's anyone. The state considers Dublin ponds to be private ponds, essentially. And any regulations would be local regulations. So Dublin has the right to have regulations. It's just the state has no interest in our legal status.
No, it's just a wonderful amenity. If someone's visiting, or their grandchildren are coming, or their children, and they can go fish in our ponds without the hassle of buying a license. So it's really a nice amenity for the once or twice a year that you might do that. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Mary Lee?
Section 9628, you indicate that a person or a party organizing an event or activity in a park or recreation area must seek a permit. Does this apply to neighborhood parks as well as the bigger Kaufman Park type settings?
Yeah, you know, kind of the idea of this really has to do with so when you talk about an event, if it's just a gathering of neighbors, you know, there really isn't a permit process, and we do not reserve, you know, neighborhood parks as such.
But this section definitely has to do with those who have, when you use the word organize, some of that really is to discourage those who promote events that might have money that changes hands during those events. So it is applicable to all parks, but when the word permit, it's, if someone's having just a private gathering, we don't reserve the park, so thus there really wouldn't be an event permit as such.
So the trigger is if you're formally reserving it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's where so for instance, we get frequent phone calls that someone wants to reserve a neighborhood park, and we at first, we say there is no such mechanism, and second, you can have your gathering. Again, we're talking about basically type of just private affairs that do not have any commercial type of activities associated with it. But we tell the same people that keep in mind that the public as a whole is invited to be in that park at the exact same time that you're having your affair there.
So a homeowners association that wanted to have a picnic and happened to decide to have it at the location of the park that exists in their neighborhood, they do not need a permit.
We recognize that they're going to be having that event, but someone outside the neighborhood could be in that park at the exact. Where conversely, if you're renting the pavilion here, you have essentially exclusive rights to the pavilion.
Right.
With that.
Thank you.
While we're on the subject, the new Amberley Park, is that, well, what if 10 or 15 of my neighbors decided we wanted to go there and have a picnic? Do we just...
Well, that shelter, actually, New Amberley, the shelter itself is rentable. So you could have your picnic in the pavilion, and if no one has rented it, you have your picnic in the pavilion. Someone may show up, though, with a slip that says that they have exclusive rights to that. Again, we're talking about, in that case, we're talking about the pavilion, not the park. So
Right.
you can
That's
put
what I
your
meant.
blankets out on the ground next to the pavilion.
Right.
But
And if it's not reserved, obviously you're sharing it, to the extent there's capacity and
the
so
park is not reserved. In that case,
I mean the shelter.
pavilion is reserved.
I know
in
it's
that case.
reservable, but it doesn't have to be.
Oh, no,
in
no,
order to be
no.
used.
It's first come, if it's not reserved, it's first come, first serve, including sharing with someone else.
Okay.
But if you rent it, you do have exclusive rights to it, the pavilion.
Okay. Is any of this online anywhere? I mean, if I was, there was a shelter.
Reservations, I believe, are online. All the park, anything that is reservable within the parks is online. Not everything's reservable again.
Are there any little signs on the shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I think we've beaten that to death, haven't we? No, just, if there,
Along with the fish.
I meant to say we thoroughly discussed it. Thank you, Fred.
Sure.
If there aren't any other questions or comments, we will have the second reading on March 25th. Thank you very much. So we are now moving on to ordinance 21-13.
Adopting and enacting a supplement S33 to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Thank you.
This is
Yes.
just standard housekeeping to get the ordinances that are adopted by council codified.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Going once, going twice? Hearing none, I would ask if someone wants to make a motion to dispense with public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. And if you call for the vote?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber? Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mrs. Waring?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Thank you. And the vote in the ordinance,
Ms.
please?
Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber? Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mrs. Waring?
Yes.
And Mayor Lucklider?
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving on to ordinance 22-13.
Rezoning approximately 28.1 acres located on the west side of Highland Quarry Road, approximately 1,030 feet north of the intersection with Brand Road and Mitchell DeWitt Road, from R Rural District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, this is Celtic Crossing PUD, to establish a 44-lot, single-family detached residential development and 8.75 acres of open space.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Need an,
I'll
Excuse me?
introduce it.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, Mr. Goodwin.
As noted in the clerk's reading, this is a 28-acre site located on the west side of Highland Croy Road and north of Mitchell DeWitt Road. It's located across Highland Croy Road from the Dublin Jerome High School. It's surrounded primarily by the Glacier Ridge Metro Park to the north and the west, and a few homes in Jerome Township to the south. The site has frontage along Highland Croy Road, as well as a small amount of frontage along Mitchell DeWitt Road. It's also bisected by a tributary to the North Fork of the Indian Run, and includes a stream corridor protection zone along that portion of the site. It's also impacted by a high-tension power line easement that runs through a corner of the site. The proposed preliminary development plan includes 44 single-family lots. 7 of those are located to the east of the stream, and the proposed development text includes additional architectural requirements for those lots that would be visible from Highland Croy Road. The proposed development plan includes 8.75 acres of open space. The typical subdivision regulations would require at least 1.8. Those open space areas include a 200-foot setback along Highland Croy Road, generally shown along the red dash line parallel to the roadway, as well as a variable width 200 to 50-foot setback along Mitchell DeWitt Road. The community plan recommends generally 100 to 200-foot setbacks along rural character roadways as indicated in the plan. As I mentioned, the site includes 44 proposed single-family lots. That works out to a density of 1.57 dwelling units per acre. The community plan recommends 1.5 units per acre for this particular site. The open space areas include 3 wet stormwater retention ponds, and the site is also bordered by tree rows along the shared border with the Glacier Ridge Metro Park to the north and the west, as well as trees along the existing stream. And the development text includes a tree preservation requirement. The development text also includes a proposed modification or tree waiver modification to the typical Dublin tree replacement requirements. That includes a tree per tree provision as opposed to an inch per inch provision as typically included in the code. Locations, I apologize, I don't have a laser pointer with me, but the primary locations where trees are proposed to be removed is for the stream crossing of a new street that would connect Highland Croy Road to Mitchell DeWitt Road through the site, as well as a small number of trees in the southwest corner of the site to allow for improved site visibility at the intersection of the new Celtic Crossing Drive with Mitchell DeWitt Road, and that includes improved visibility to the Glacier Ridge Metro Park multi-use path, which crosses Mitchell DeWitt Road to the west of the site. This proposed development plan also includes 2 multi-use path connections directly to the Glacier Ridge path system, one to the north along the stream crossing, and the applicant has worked with the Metro Parks to arrive at an alignment for a new path that would extend along the north edge of the site and connect to the existing path that is already in the Metro Park directly to the west of the site. The applicant has also worked with the Metro Parks to gain approval of another path that would run parallel to Mitchell DeWitt Road and connect to the existing Metro Park path system. And the applicant is also proposing a marked pedestrian crossing at the new intersection of Celtic Crossing Drive with Highland Croy Road that would provide pedestrian access to the Dublin Jerome High School site.
Justin, excuse me, the path to the north, the lengthier one, This would be constructed at the applicant's expense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Through an agreement with the Metro Parks.
Okay, thank you.
This proposed development plan is accompanied by a preliminary plat that is consistent with the requirements of the development text and the subdivision regulations. The plat indicates the location of the tree preservation zone. It also indicates the location of the stream corridor protection zone. There are a small number of portions of lots along the stream that are included in the outer portion of the stream corridor protection zone. Engineering has reviewed this and found the requirements included in the development text to be acceptable. The plat also indicates the locations of 7 proposed open space reserves that will be dedicated to the city, maintained by a force and funded homeowners association. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this application and recommends approval along with planning with 8 conditions for the preliminary development plan. 3 of those conditions had specifically to do with revisions to the development text. The applicant has performed those revisions thus far. They've also made some minor modifications to the conceptual landscape plan according to some of the Planning and Zoning Commission conditions as well. The remaining conditions will be taken care of at the final development plan stage. The preliminary plat was recommended for approval with 1 condition, and that condition has been met. And planning recommends approval of ordinance 2213 on April 8th.
Thank you. Questions? Fairly?
Yes, I have a question regarding the tree waiver request, or in the language. So how is this proposal an advantage to the city?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that question. The proposal is consistent with the city's requirements for building the street, and the community plan actually shows a street located in this particular location, including a stream crossing. So the trees that will be impacted by this existing street, or this proposed street, we essentially had anticipated would need to be removed. In terms of whether or not the particular modification to the tree preservation requirements is appropriate, I think is a question for council to consider.
Well, I guess I need a follow-up question then because of your answer. So you're saying that we originally had anticipated that trees would be removed because of the road that we were recommending, well, we knew would be built at some point. So has it been our policy that when that is the case, then the developer does not pay inch by inch, but just want, tree to tree?
Not necessarily a particular policy. This approach has been undertaken with some other residential developments as well.
So this is not a precedent?
This would not be the first time that this approach had been taken.
Thank you.
Questions?
I have more of a comment.
Sure.
I thought several years ago we decided that we were, and I'm speaking to lots number 35 through 40, and I thought we were going to try to eliminate that type of planning and design, meaning that those 6 homes, that they will, one neighbor can look into the backyard of the other neighbor, into their kitchen, and so forth and so on. And we were going to try to be a little more creative in our design and layouts to avoid that scenario. And I'm kind of disappointed to see that here in the year 2013.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at I can't quite see the numbers myself. You indicated 35 and 40?
Well, the ones in the, and I don't have a laser here either.
6 lots right there in the middle of
I see.
each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's just my comment. I don't think that's a very imaginative design, and I thought we were going to try to get away from that concept.
Okay.
Because we've had all kinds of issues in the past. In fact, we saw it earlier this spring where one resident came in and talked about, well, Are the pine trees in the backyard, does that constitute a fence, you know, that type of thing? And we got into some issues with view sheds and green space and things. And,
No, he's talking
I just think this
right
begs
here.
for those type of
So you
issues,
have
those
the-
type of problems.
One thing that the development text does speak to that would apply to those lots is in certain driveway and garage configurations, if the driveway is, or if the garage is side-loaded, for instance, the rear edge of the pavement would require a hedge along the edge so there would not be headlight pollution into the rear of the adjoining yard. So in some of those cases, some of those issues are being considered.
Well, you know, I mean, if you're in house, or lot 35, and then lot 36, I think, is below that, you know, I hope you get along with your neighbors, because if you're both out there cooking out on the grill one night on your patio, you might as well just invite each other over and, you know, sit together. I just don't think it's a clever design. It's my personal opinion, but I thought we were going to try to get away from that.
I'm not familiar with that particular past discussion. We certainly run into these cases throughout many developments in which essentially a new block is created and rear yards are shared. It is fairly common.
I know, we have them all over the city, and
I think that Rick brings up a really good point, that while we have seen this historically, that we're now seeing problems that have been created with it. And that perhaps one way of handling it, because there's actually, Kathy pointed out, there's another section over to the left of that that's exactly the same way.
yes, there is.
And so you have two areas in this development where you have backyards backing up to each other. So maybe one way of managing it would be in the text that there would be something about landscaping requirements of backyards, because that's where we got into the problem that we've had now several years of discussion about periodically. And I don't know if that's the only place that it might be managed, but we are sort of setting up neighbors wanting to provide barriers or demarcation more, I should say, as opposed to barriers. They want a demarcation of their yard, short of fencing. And so somehow we need to come up with some language that developers can put in their text that allows for that without the forest look or something that, you know, we have some neighbors who have raised concerns about.
Okay. Is that something that you would like considered as part of this particular development text, or something you'd like us to consider for future developments?
Well,
I don't know, Rick, you can.
I don't know if we can, I don't know if you can inject that in this text, but I think you weren't present at the meeting, and this problem arose, and what we're asking the planning staff from now on is probably, when you get a parcel like this, to do a radiating wheel design so that you don't have houses, basically they're on cul-de-sacs. If you look probably to the earliest phases of Muirfield, they were laid out very carefully and correctly so that you really don't have an abutting neighbor. It saves the homeowner a ton of money on side yard landscaping, backyard landscaping, and so, and then they're looking out into a view shed. So when a cube comes in again, somebody wants to put 24 houses on it or 48 houses, we would like you and the planning department to start nurturing the design along for a much higher quality design instead of row houses, the old song, ticky-tacky little row houses all in a row, and not here anymore. So we want you guys to take these things and sort of help the planners and get this so that we don't have the problems that we've had this spring, and actually we end up with a higher quality of, higher standard of housing for our people. And that's really what we're asking you to do.
well stated, John.
Well, thank you for starting it.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I would like to continue what Mayor Lee started. Maybe I didn't come down to the same clue. You're telling me that the tree rate waiver is going to be in the text, the development text?
The applicant has proposed, the copy of the development text that has been included in your packet includes a modification to the tree replacement
I
requirements.
cannot I cannot approve any development text that is putting a waiver in it without going through the regular process. I think that's very kind of tricky, and we're going to, when people build places, they know they're going to have a road, and they know they're going to take down trees. And sometimes when you site the whole development, sometimes you take down more trees where the roads are than when their houses are going to be. And you need a way to replace and make sure that there's a shade and the trees are there. But I don't think I can support something that the waiver is included in the text. I think it needs to come before council as a separate issue so we can look at it carefully.
Why was the staff recommending this process rather than our normal process, as Kathy pointed out, where the developer comes forward with a waiver request?
This is not the first time that this approach has been taken, and we have had some discussion with the city manager's office about essentially what have become two different processes, and we need to rectify that.
If I could comment at this point, during the pre-P&Z planning meeting that I attended the other day, the chairman of the Planning Commission, Ms. Groobs, asked me if I could be the standard bearer from the Planning Commission, and I was going to bring this up at roundtable, but it seems appropriate. She said that the Planning Commission's really frustrated with the tree waiver process and the idea that we sort of grant these tree waivers. Somebody comes forward and says, I need this tree waiver, and council says, okay, and staff approves it. There doesn't seem to be sort of a quantifiable criteria, and what she suggested would be some kind of a quantifiable criteria. Her point is that in the future, we're going to have a lot of trees that need replaced, not on site necessarily, but citywide. Thinking about the Riverside Drive Park, she mentioned a couple invasive insect species, in addition to the emerald ash borer, that were going to be coming in the next several years, and that we're going to, require the city to remove trees. And she said, we are going to need more trees than we realize, and we need to make provisions and get money in the city coffers so that if, they aren't replacing trees on site, their developers are contributing to the tree.
Exactly.
The tree fund. And so, it was her request that we review that and ask staff to come up with some quantifiable criteria and make it much more of a formal process where the developer knows going into it, what their contribution is going to be, and we have a much more of a criteria than our traditional process.
Well, let me ask you, based on what Amy said, something triggered. Don't we have a provision in the for these trees? You don't have, if you don't do inch by inch or tree by tree or whatever, we calculate on a monetary amount and pay the monetary fund. See, we're losing out all the way around on this when you put it in the text. And I think what you're saying is that we're not accumulating any money in our tree fund to start replacing trees like all the ash trees that we tore down, because we keep giving waivers to this, and we need to start looking at this a little more carefully so that if it's not possible, and sometimes it's not because they're too thick, that they then pay the tree waiver fee or the tree for tree inch by inch fee, and we're never, it looks as though we're not even looking at that. We're just modifying it with this waiver. And I want more information about this, and for me, that needs to be taken out. The development text needs to come in as a separate issue.
I think the other thing to the point is a developer who has a site may choose to lay things out differently to preserve more trees if in fact they know, that it's going to be costly. And I know, there have been issues with, potentially issues with our tree preservation ordinance and how much we can enforce and so forth. But I think we should relook at that because it's, it's our tradition and it's something that I think we all value. Now that I've heard that, I'm thinking maybe I can ask Ms. Grooms and the law director's office and perhaps myself to sit down and we can bring something back that would do what the chairman suggested, because I think it's a good idea. And I know over the years I've been, kind of questioning, why are we doing this? It seems, but, it's staff recommends it, or, it's sort of become our our process to go ahead and approve them without much question. I think we need to look.
I think you make a very good point about looking at the plan and modifying the plan based on the trees, that that's possible. I think you make a good point.
I mean, it may not have made a difference, and I'm not saying in this case it would have made a difference how, the subdivision ultimately would lay out, but, certainly we've seen sites where developers have been very sensitive and very careful, and we've seen other sites where not so much. Thank you.
Rick, did you want to say something?
No, I think I agree with what I'm hearing here, but I would like to hear from staff and get some of their thoughts on how did we get to this point and what's best going forward. I see there are sometimes legitimate reasons why we would allow for or grant a fee, not a tree waiver, whether it's, maybe there's a tree every 3 feet. Well, maybe we don't need to, we could waive, some requirements there, but maybe there's also some times when the fee should not be waived. So I'd kind of like to hear from staff as to what are these different scenarios, where's their head in terms of how we got to this point. Certainly it sounds like P&Z's thought about this a little bit, you guys are talking about it, but it seems like, I'd like to hear more, bottom line.
Rick, in the past, if I remember, when they bring forth the waiver request, they itemize all those things. They itemize what the cost is to the developer and what,
That's true. That's
the
true.
size and all these trees. And that's been a lot of the times when we've made our judgment on that, because we know the cost and we know the different trees and we know what we're losing and what we're gaining. So I think, and that's what bothers me about this. I don't have those things that you pointed out about the cost of them.
It's always been on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
Recognize that. And yeah, it's something new, and I haven't caught it, that it's now in the development text. We really haven't had a discussion on why that is, and I bet I'm sure you have something interesting to say.
Well, and as part of the review of this ordinance, we had that discussion internally at staff level that we need to bring back requests for waivers separately and have it under staff comments or under other. And if it's included as part of the rezoning, then typically what we had done in the past is we would bring that portion of the agenda up under the ordinance, or if it was something that was done after the legislation had been passed, based upon the fact that at that time we knew what trees were planted and where they weren't and how many inches were actually removed, then we brought back a separate request that outlined all of that information. So we've had that discussion that we need to have that done separately, if for no other reason than tracking when waivers aren't approved, so that we know to collect the tree replacement fee.
Part of my thought is, Marcia, that maybe the reason why you were including this in the development text was because it somehow expedites the entire process. But I think in the past we've had tree waivers come through just at the same time. So.
Yeah, we have. So I don't know how many that we've had that has been included in the text, but in this one, we had that discussion and talked about the fact that we need to bring it back as a separate request.
So since this isn't due to be voted on till April, is it possible to have it removed from this text and bring it forth? I think it can be brought forth the same night, but with the specifics that you have outlined that we generally have. Because they've already done their tree study, so.
And I would think with a prelim, we could certainly add, if we so choose, council could add conditions on as well.
Yeah.
Which I think that might be one here.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
As an added condition, yeah.
Well,
I mean, not a condition for them, but it, yes.
No.
And
Yeah.
if necessary, when we talk about this, we can pass it with conditions. We can add that on. I'd like to ask one quick question.
Right.
Are you saying we've done this before, allowed these waivers in the text before?
There have been a few residential planned unit developments that have included modifications to the tree replacement requirements in the text.
Wow.
We can get that information for you.
My memory really faded on that
Yeah,
one.
mine did too. And I guess I'm disappointed with the staff letting that go through like that, knowing that we established the tree waiver for a very definite purpose, and that we do need to replace trees, and that funding is necessary. So I hope that this never happens, that it goes into text again.
I would like to invite the applicant to come forward and/or his representative.
Arguing about who's coming forward.
Kevin McCauley, Stavro of Interest, 565 Metro Place South, Suite 480, Dublin, Ohio. Just to address this, would you like to talk about that?
That would seem like
If we would.
that's a
I think
topic of interest.
a couple points if I can.
Sure.
And somebody else may have to help me out on this as well, like Greg or somebody. But I think Rick hit it pretty quickly. We looked at this to say, if we're coming right back for a tree waiver request, we were trying to time them as one thing to move the process along as quickly as we can. We went through the analysis with P&Z and determined really what Ms. Grooms was concerned about was, is the site going to be left with less trees at the end of the day or more trees? And we all determined through some analysis that it's going to end up with more, even with the waiver in place, when we come across the creek and we remove those trees, with all the street trees and all the other landscaping trees that we're putting in, this site ends up with more trees than it hadn't. So it wasn't that we're being harmed or not. When we looked at our site and said, what are we doing? We had more trees than when we started. That was what I would say is the true benefit or reason of the tree waiver or even the tree policy, is that you're not removing trees and having a site harmed with less trees. So if we're coming back with a site with more trees at the end of the day, that's what we've done. So the tree waiver request was there to help us on a cost basis simply as that, so we don't have to go and do even more trees. So that's what we were looking at when we looked at that analysis. And I don't know if Justin has any of the numbers. We can certainly provide those numbers to you. We've done them. We had them prepared previously when we talked about this with P&Z and had a pretty lengthy discussion about it at that time, and they approved it at that point.
The only point I'll add to that, and that's correct interpretation of how the discussion happened at the Planning Commission. The discussion of whether or not street trees should be considered, essentially, that is typically something that we don't consider for tree replacement requirements. The trees that would otherwise be required to meet other code requirements would not factor into the tree replacement. So that's a different way of looking at it.
Right. I was going to say we don't normally include street trees that are part of the requirement to the development. I just happened to notice, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up before, but I noticed you have a letter from the school district here regarding the connection path at the north end. And what is that going to look like?
It's going to be the same path that would be the Metro Parks path. I don't remember if it's 8 or 10 foot.
Okay, so
path.
you're really talking about on the property there where the trees are and the path?
No, it crosses Highland Croy. We're going to take, the path runs all the way from the north end of the site. It'll come down along the creek there, then front lots 1 and 2, cross Highland Croy, and then there's a gap there between, there's open space there between where the path on that side of the road on fronting the high school is. So we're going to connect the path all the way to the high school path.
A path meaning a walking?
A multi-purpose path.
Multi-purpose?
10 foot wide or 8 foot wide.
And how do people cross the street there?
There's going to be the flashers such as it's on Highland Croy now at the other subdivision where it's the
at Tullymore Drive.
Yeah, Tullymore, where there's a marked crossway with the flashers.
I see.
So we're doing all of that.
Okay. Thank you. I guess the only concern I have is that later on, is the school district going to come and say we need a tunnel there? And whether money needs to be set aside or bonded or something for some period of time in case that materializes.
Well, and I think the fact that the further on the south, we have a similar situation that's already set up. I don't know that we've had any discussion that would lead us to believe they would make that request. That doesn't mean that they couldn't in the future, but I think based upon how we've looked at Highland Croy, that's something that we would not recommend a tunnel.
And, you know, it's 44 houses, right? I mean, it's not like it's
It's not a
200 or
huge
300 subdivision where you would be generating more young people crossing the street there. But they could ultimately add an elementary school or something else. I just want to keep that in mind as, you know,
and-
everything develops out on that side of the west side.
Yeah, and we're not aware at this point of an elementary school there because further to the north is Glacier Ridge. And
Right.
so as far as elementary schools, I think that's the only one in the area.
There are also physical constraints in the Highland Croy corridor itself in terms of the feasibility of getting a tunnel in, given the depth of the water table. Engineering could speak to that in more detail.
Thank you.
Justin, I'm glad you mentioned that because before I asked the applicant to come forward, I was going to ask a question about drainage. Are we satisfied that we can manage drainage on this site? I drive by it a lot, and my general impression is that, you know, the soil conditions are such, and certainly I'm no expert in that respect, but, you know, it seems like it's such, and I from time to time see standing water in the area.
So as part of this preliminary development plan, the applicant was required to do a floodplain analysis, and they provided engineering, sufficient information to engineering that they feel comfortable at this stage in the development process that stormwater will be able to be handled adequately. Obviously, much more detail will be provided with the final development plan as well. But at this stage, engineering is comfortable with the information provided.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to address?
I think the only thing, kind of going back, if I can, about talking about the tree waiver request in the connections and the bike paths and everything, is one of the big things that we looked at with this is the standard requirements, not only tree waiver, but bike path and connections, stuff like that. What we were looking at and comparing it to at one point was just along Highland Croy. A bike path along the frontage of Highland Croy is kind of what code asked for, and we asked for not to be able to do that, but to do all the other path connections. And that's all of our costs. We're putting a bond up and a maintenance bond up with Metro Parks for 3 years to maintain those paths. That's probably a $40,000 to $50,000 path system that we're doing to those path systems. So that kind of went into all of our thoughts when we're asking for tree waivers and stuff like that, is that we really went up what we thought was above and beyond. People talked about wanting to connect the high school side of Dublin to the Metro Parks side. So we were doing that. We knew it was a benefit for us too. I mean, we want it. We think it's a great amenity to our neighborhood. But that was some of the stuff, when we took everything into effect, is how I think when we sat down with staff and we had this language in the text, that they were okay with that. And I'm sure you can ask them, but we were trying to show that we were doing a lot of upgrades. And if we can't get the waivers and we do this and this, do we have to look at other things? And that's really what it came down to. We were trying to provide a lot of extra amenities to this small park, and I think that's what or the small project. I think that's what we were doing. So nothing more than that.
Okay. Then are we all clear with respect to what council's expectation is with respect to the tree waiver and what we'll see April 8th?
You would like to see it removed from the text and treated separately as a separate consideration?
Right, but it can be brought in the same night.
Yes.
Okay.
But we need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which they already have.
Right. And you've told us those are available?
Yeah, well, I think we've done a preliminary
have
analysis
them.
on that. We can put them together, yeah.
Okay.
It's not a problem.
Okay. Was there anything else? All right. Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you, Justin. We'll have a second reading then on April 8th. Ordinance 24-13.
Authorizing the city manager to execute necessary conveyance documentation to acquire a 0.279 acre with 0.279 acres as present road occupied more or less, permanent multi-use utility, grading and drainage easement, 0.012 acres more or less temporary easement, and a 0.020 acres more or less temporary easement from Sumfon and Tanaporn Carve Sheet.
Thank you. Introduction, please. Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Ott.
Good evening. Staff has begun negotiations with a variety of property owners along the Brand Road corridor for the addition of a multi-use path. The item before you this evening is to acquire easements and acquire some present road occupied. We were able to secure these with good faith negotiations at the appraised value of $19,100. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Comments?
I hope the rest of them go equally as well.
Me too.
All right, well then we will have the second reading on March 25th. Moving on to the resolution portion of our agenda, Resolution 10-13.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a broadband services agreement with Metro Data Center LLC.
Introduction, please.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, good evening. Every 3 years, the city makes a significant increase in broadband services purchasing due to the changing requirements of its own hosted solutions and bandwidth-heavy applications that the city deploys on an ongoing basis. Due to a combination of having purchased this broadband service in incremental allotments and the need to carry some additional capacity, the city currently has some excess capacity that will not be used in the immediate future. So due to the fact that we have this excess capacity and that we're located now in Metro Data Center LLC, we have the opportunity to lease some of that extra capacity for $1,750 a month. And I guess another way to explain that's very similar to what we've been doing as a city relative to excess capacity fiber optics. You buy these things in increments. You can't use it up all at once. So it's an opportunity for the city to make some revenue back off of that excess capacity until such a time we need it. And this agreement would allow us to pull that capacity back when we're ready to use it. The period of this agreement would be for 3 years, which is commensurate to the 3-year lease agreement that we just recently purchased this bandwidth for. So with that, staff would recommend approval of this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Hearing none, Ann, if you call for the vote, please.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber? Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Boring.
I don't think we have anything under other, so we're on to staff comments. Marcia?
The only update on staff comments is last Wednesday, I think you'll recall that there was a joint economic development district meeting with, up in Marysville, or at their wastewater treatment facility on Route 33. And there were several representatives from townships in the area and the Union County and Marysville, and we had 3 people from the city of Dublin. And it was basically an educational update similar to what we had back in June, July, August, sometime last summer. And the discussion was that the next step probably is to look at scheduling another meeting where we would have a facilitator that would start looking at and identifying issues and steps to move forward. So at this time, it was just another additional educational discussion with interested parties.
And how might this affect us, the city of Dublin?
It may not impact us. As far as interest, our interest is that if we have the ability to participate in the JED, where we would have involvement in potentially the development that may occur, and then also based upon the revenues that are generated from the development, that we may be able to capture some of those that are outside of what would be identified for capital improvements that are needed within the JED district. But there are a lot of issues with regard to how we could participate with our agreement that we have with the City of Columbus. And then there's issues with how the township has to approve this, and there may be issues where the township would not approve us being involved. So right now, we're still looking at what all those issues and options are.
I mean, at one period of time, there was discussion regarding entering into these agreements in the 161-33 Post Road area. Is there anything potentially imminent there that might involve the city of Dublin?
As far as I know, there's nothing imminent at this time, but that is part of the area that we're discussing.
I guess it makes sense to educate ourselves and be involved in the conversation. Any other comments? Okay. Was there anything else, Marcia? All right, very good. Moving on, in our agenda, we have a final report, the Council Special Committee regarding the Killed in Action Memorial, and Gerber, you going to report?
I will. I think all of you have at your desk, I think it was part of the packet, the result of our March 15th review of the recommendations from staff with respect to the design, the inclusion policy, names for the inscription, and the funding of this project. And first off, I want to say thank you to Fred and Sarah. I know this has taken an awful lot of work, particularly when we get into the area of name inclusion and the criteria to establish, who we would put on this list and the like. I guess going down here briefly, with respect to design, that's part of the attachment A. And John, if you want to chime in at any point, please feel free to do so. We were trying to do something that was what we felt was appropriate to memorialize and to for those who were killed in action, but we wanted to be somewhat simply stated, but yet we wanted this memory to last forever, so to speak. And that's what, when we came up with the flame idea there at the top of the structure here, and I think you might have how that flame will fit in there, what it will look like. I think that looks pretty good. We also went through and tried to come up with a couple of the lettering with respect to the names. We thought we would just keep it simple, just name and date, as opposed to branch of service, conflict, that sort of thing. We thought that might get a little too cluttered, if you will, by doing all of that. We did come up with two quotes, one from General Pershing and one from Abraham Lincoln. We thought those were consistent with our theme of we want to honor those and do so in a subtle but impactful way, if you will. The inclusion policy, I know Sarah and Fred contacted a lot of other cities and what they do, but more importantly, checked with the Department of Defense and others to determine what is officially deemed a individual killed in action. And I feel very confident that Sarah and Fred have captured those protocols, if you will. So, and again, I want to thank them for that, because that does take time to go through all that. There are 16 individuals that they have identified already that we can put on the monument, and they went through a lot of records to verify. There is a criteria here for how one would be included for KIA recognition, and that's part of attachment B. It goes through, the background, the definition, and it goes through the criteria by which there would be one would be approved for that. Those recommendations would come to City Council. It's more just merely to verify, if you will, and to confirm that the criteria has been met. And it's sort of a cross and check, if you will, or check and balance, if you will. We are not trying to make that political per se. So we talked about that at the last meeting last Tuesday, and we thought the appropriate role for council would be is to, check and verify that the inclusion protocol has been followed, and that this individual in fact does meet that criteria. I don't know if I'm missing anything on here. I think the rest was pretty self-explanatory, but I'm sure there might be some discussion, but I'll go ahead and put the motion on the table, and we move for approval of the recommendation for the design, inclusion policy, and names for subscription, and the funding for this project. And would like to say, before there is a second, that the cost, I'm happy to say, is lower than what was budgeted. So I think we're doing pretty well there too as well.
Okay.
So I'd ask for a second. Well, you can make a motion, it can be second, then there's discussion, so. So
I'll second it. Rick, I had a question regarding the stained glass. Is this is this still conceptual, or do you want council's approval of this evening?
Well, we're asking for approval. As it sits now, it is conceptual.
Okay. Okay.
And,
well, discussion. John?
No, I agree with Rick. Sarah and Fred did a great job researching this with us, and I think in a very concise way, this sort of accomplishes the mission. It includes everybody that we know to date that's been killed in action. It has the symbols of all the military units. The stained glass window was a interesting idea at the top of the monument. There was a great deal of discussion whether there should be a flame or not, and really this was a good compromise, I thought. Something that doesn't need maintenance but can last the test of time and be colorful, and it was set in such a way that the sunlight should pass through it. And so sort of a memorial to those who had fallen. So it was really a interesting project, and I again want to say that this one came in on time and was very concise, and the staff did a great job. So good piece of goods, I thought, art-wise, shape-wise, form.
Yeah, we did have some question also, Tim, with respect to these colors, and I think Fred and Sarah can help explain this, because I'm wondering, well, we're going to see bright orange, bright red, and how is this going to work? But I'm understanding it's the light that comes through. I'll be quiet because they can do a far better job of explaining this than I can, but I suspect that's probably what you're going to be talking about.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ott?
Sure. On the stained glass component, the study can't quite do it justice when it gets photocopied. So the colors had been enhanced for your benefit, for review to understand that it would be colored glass. This is antique glass, so it has some natural waviness to it. It's got some small air bubbles in it that help with the light refraction. After reviewing several samples, I'm confident that the artist that designed this has made a selection that would be appropriate and complement the site.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, at our meeting last Tuesday, we did not want a neon light out there, one that certainly defeats the entire theme and purpose of this monument. And we asked a lot of questions of Sarah and Fred to make sure this was somewhat more on what I call the subtle side, and that it wouldn't be this bright as you see.
I like the concept, I like the whole thing, but how do we preserve this from the elements? How's it protected?
So we've worked with the artists. The artist is employed by Franklin Art Glass, who has a long history of creating quality pieces you see throughout Ohio. They've given us some conservation recommendations, or Fred and I have gone back and forth on those. And honestly, if something were to happen, fortunately, it's not a terribly expensive thing to repair.
So, I mean, it's hard for me to see this. For instance, if water got on it and then it froze or something like that, is it being protected somewhat? Like,
it's leaded glass. It's embedded inside almost in the granite slab. The granite slab here is, I can't recall if it's 8 or 10 inches thick, but it's not, you know.
yeah.
It has some protection built into the design.
Okay, sounds like a beautiful idea.
Fairly.
Just one thing, I am glad to see that you do have it coming to City Council for additions, because I think that is the public venue that then would inform the public of someone new, presumably, hopefully it isn't an old person that we didn't find, but it would be somebody new and relevant to our community of today's world. And so that informs the public of something happening. So I really like that process. And I guess because of what Sarah just said about Franklin Art, are we totally committed to Franklin Art? And have we talked to Cullen Art Glass, which is right in historic Dublin, and has done the Ohio State University stained glass for the stadium and all?
Franklin Art Glass was able to bring the expertise we were looking for in the design phase. I feel comfortable this is a small dollar amount that it costs for the production of this piece, that I think this is the right choice, the right artist for what we are looking for. Our artist happens to be a Vietnam veteran who has then spent the last 30 years in this as an artist in this area. I feel very comfortable that he's the right choice for this project.
I wish that we had, however, given an opportunity to one of our own businesses who may also have a similar background and has spent his life. I don't know his background in terms of a veteran, but I do know he's spent his life and he's had his business here for over 20 years. So I'm sorry to hear that we didn't think to offer that opportunity to somebody who's right in our own community. I'm sure the Franklin art people have a strong reputation and that they'll do a good job, but I think so would of our local artists. But I think your committee did a great job, and I really like the idea, and I like the price.
Yeah.
Even better.
Well, we had a couple of finance committee members
Right,
on
and
there.
does
so
this mean that
we
the
were
committee
watching.
then, assuming we have an affirmative vote tonight, that the committee then is prepared to receive a thank you letter from us and for their service, and that they are finished with their work?
And we are ready to retire the special committee as well. You know, one thing and I wish, unfortunately, time being what it is merely, we met last Tuesday, and our packets went out Thursday, so there wasn't time to prepare the minutes. So I wish those would have been available for tonight, because some of the questions that were asked were certainly in those minutes. But one thing also the minutes will show, and I was asking, this will be unveiled, hopefully Memorial Day this year, and was asking, not only asking, but really kind of hoping that it would not necessarily be the city itself that would be promoting this on that day, that rather it be the veterans groups and others that would take the lead, and been assured by Sarah and Fred that that would be the case. And I think that's more appropriate, and I think our veterans will be very happy and will take the lead on that.
Amy, do you have any comment?
No, not anything that hasn't been said already. Just great job, and thank you very much for your work.
And even though I have my question, I wasn't, I just had a question, but I would like to thank the committee too. I know it's taken a lot of your time, and the staff has responded remarkably, and it's really something that we all have looked forward to having this in honor of those people. So I would also like to add my thank you.
It's just one more thing, as we develop more as a great city, that it's just another, one other piece of the pie, if you will, another root in the community. You know, a lot of cities have recognized many different things, and I think this is a fine thing that Dublin is doing.
And one of the things that came out of this too was with our shrinking cemetery plots, which are getting few and far between, discussion came up about we should start focusing on possible columbariums where the city could take some plots of land and for ashes to be deposited. And, you know, we should probably start thinking about creating that. You know, we're one of the few cemeteries that really doesn't have that. And there's some very beautiful ones in Worthington around the church. They're actually done in the church wall. And so it's a way to extend the cemetery and get an opportunity for more of our residents to utilize that cemetery. So as a group, we just want to bring that to your attention, that we should start. It's a very inexpensive way to inter a lot of people. So we're thinking that we should start focusing on that. Maybe it's something we discuss at the annual retreat.
One time we had a cemetery commission. Do we still have that, or?
No, we don't.
They were rolled into
Yeah.
community services.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rolled into CSAC at one point, and
And with regard to the cemetery, Fred is going to be preparing a report sometime within the next month or so to provide you with an update on some information related to the cemetery.
Well, I think John's comments are something to keep in mind, you know, as we proceed. I'd like to add my thanks to all concerned with respect to this particular project. And I think the discussion's ended, so if you would call for the vote, please.
Mrs. Waring? Yes. Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, we are moving on to the Administrative Committee and Amy Saleh and discussion with respect to our retreat.
Yeah, thank you all for participating in the survey. Thank you to Sarah for constructing the survey online. As you can see from the memo, we are kind of all over the board with respect to topics and ideas. Ms. Tennessee Zerker provided us with a memo with her ideas. Unfortunately, we were not all so organized, and so I think we're going to have to go through and, I don't know if anybody has any suggestions how to formulate our agenda, but that's our hope tonight, is to formulate the agenda for our goal-setting retreat so that staff can be aware of what we desire in terms of content for that, and figure out in terms of staff reporting, personnel to be needed, and so forth. And then we can get the goal-setting retreat on our calendar and started.
May I make a suggestion? You had mentioned, one of your ideas was some of these topics would not raise to goal setting, but workshops.
Right.
And in Marilee's memo, which unfortunately we don't have at our desk tonight.
Yes, you do.
I do? I'm sorry. I did have. She has mentioned a couple of items that could be workshop sessions.
Workshop worthy. Yeah, and I think, thank you for bringing that up. In reviewing the topics with Ms. Ott the other day, we talked about the fact that some of these, back when Jane Brodigan was city manager, she came up with the idea of study sessions or council work sessions on off Mondays. Maybe once a month we get together for a couple hours in an evening and spend time, intensely studying one topic or another outside of the course of our normal meetings. And it gives us a chance to really focus, and it gives staff a chance to provide the level of detail that doesn't really fit into a regular agenda. So I think there are some things that naturally could fit into that. It seems to me that the sewer and water discussion is one that could fit into a study session and would actually be a good topic for a study session, given the fact that we aren't going to have the full report till later in the year. And we really need that information, all the information, to make good decisions and make good policy, have a good policy discussion, I believe. If we don't have that data, we won't be in a position to really talk about anything other than very superficially. So with that, I don't know, do you want to go through your ideas, Marilee, about what you believed could be study session materials, and then we can talk about those and maybe get those off of our list?
Sorry, I guess I had more time than I should have yesterday, Sunday, to do this. So I took the agenda, it was on page 2 of 3 of the memo from Sarah, and that was what I was working from.
Right.
And so the first one was the Bridge Street District, and it just seemed to me that we're on a path already on that, and that we ought to stay with that. And following the final report, which we've been told would come to us sort of in late April, that a study session would be set for after that to discuss all those issues related to that. The Bridge Street District, which was the Dublin Village Center and the parking garage. I believe that Terry will provide us with more information on that later this week. So we don't have enough information today to know, is it a study session or is it just a 30-minute conversation with council at another time? Personally, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on the council review of goals from last year. Personally, that's 30 minutes. Here they were, here's what we've done, and are there any that we need to carry over, other than that? And then the global engagement strategies, I did see as a pretty significant area. We have approved that in our budget for this year, and as we know, Dana was fortunate to go with the Columbus Partnership already on one trip, and I think that that is the future, one of the major areas of the future, in addition to really understanding how we are working on retention of our current businesses, et cetera. So since that is our bread and butter, and we certainly are going to need to continue to have sufficient amounts of money available, both in terms of economic problems that might occur in the country that we're affected by, or the state, but also in terms of some of the big projects that we're beginning to hear about that will cost us a lot of money that we need to have available to us. So I see that as, 2 to 4 hours, as I indicated in my, and perhaps the bulk of our retreat. There have been discussions about a charter review, and, I think I think the way that works is you set up a charter commission, don't you? So to me, that's a 30-minute conversation. Do we really think there's sufficient content to do that, or not? I mean, we're not going to do it that day, so, it's just sort of making that decision, And then the management of city's personnel resources, I thought that really was council-only discussion as opposed to an open discussion because it's personnel matters related to us. And then the last thing that was on this agenda was the next generation of parks and recreation and culture, which I do think warrants some time and discussion that may lead to us saying, other kind of task forces or the new crack group or whatever it might, what do we call that group?
I'm not sure
What did you call them?
Crack. I mean,
Okay, that can.
Whatever we're calling that group, I don't know who we're going to assign different
Community
things.
Service Advisory
Okay.
Commission.
CSAG.
Yes, okay.
Anyway, so that's my thinking. That was just my thinking. And that gave us a pretty full day.
And that does give us a full day. I guess in looking at economic development, I thought economic development in general, not just the global international economic development strategies, but sort of in general, we're kind of always wondering what they're up to and what you guys are thinking, and always like to hear about that. And I think that might be, kind of in general, and then with a focus on the international effort as well. And then the President's Cup and the International Cultural Hospitality Exchange, I thought those were council meeting, update sorts of things. And then with respect to the library location and city investment and the city hall location and city investment, those things have kind of been out there, particularly city hall. I mean, library obviously has been ongoing, but city hall, we've talked about, is it in Bridge Street, is it not? I don't know if this is a goal-setting topic, but I feel like we need to sort of make that call. Is that something that would be in our downtown, or would that be someplace else? Because if it's going to be downtown, that sort of shapes that part of the community in a different way than if it would not be there. And so it seems like that would be a good decision to try to make. And then,
Excuse me, but do you think the timing would be appropriate? I mean, are we going to be in a position to make that decision at our goal setting?
I don't feel like the timing.
I mean, I agree it makes sense for the reasons that you state,
right.
Amy. I'm just wondering if all of our staff and everybody will be in a position to make recommendations or.
Well, we've had recommendations in the past. Like I said, I don't know that that's a goal-setting discussion. It's always my hope to keep that on the radar. So, and with respect to the library, again, I'm real interested in that. I think that it's very important to the community that we keep that moving. And, I'm real interested in the latest thinking, and we talked about what the library requirements are and what they aren't. And so with that information, I'm curious to what staff's thoughts are in the discussion. I don't know if we have somebody from the library come in and, we interact with them. I don't know if that would be beneficial. I'm interested in your thoughts on that, Marcia.
No.
I don't know, other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
it's, I read over Marilee's, I read over the package that was in our council package and kind of sorting through that. And Marilee, I think you did a pretty good job of trying to consolidate all those things. I mean, based on what I've heard here tonight, it sounds like if we were to take Mayor Lee's list of items 1 through 7, it looks like items 1, 2, and 7 are clearly workshops, and that leaves items 3, 4, 5, and 6 as potential retreat topics. One, looks like 1, 2, and 7 would be special work sessions or workshops at some defined date and time.
A goal setting, so we can set what we're looking for at that time, instead of just talking about it. We can start giving direction, and I would like to do that sooner than later.
Well, and that's fine, Kathy. I thought last time, it was last council meeting, a gentleman came here and had some, some interesting new ideas. And I thought our direction to staff was, please look into this, and get back to us. And let's see if we can, and the timing of when we can do all of that. So I thought we were kind of beginning to push that along anyway, and to get a more thorough report from staff as to, identifying certain areas, what type of interesting new things they could come up with, relative cost and so forth, and we could then at a workshop talk about those things. I mean, that was what my mindset was, but, people want to talk about it at a retreat, I guess
I think
that's fine too.
he brought up some interesting ideas that, and I thought we just gave direction for his idea. I think he brought up some interesting concepts, and what I heard in our discussion last week was that it's time we started looking at different ways of approaching, possible different ways of approaching our parks and our recreation services.
Yeah, exactly, and I thought that's what staff was going to go, kind of take back to the barn and look at and get back to us.
On this, Rick, I agree with you. I think it's, but to me, it depends on, and I think we're in somewhat all in agreement on this, this idea of a higher level of adult recreation for people. But to me, it depends on how fast the retreat's coming, and then I agree with you, then maybe from there on it spins out to be a committee meeting, or maybe we can resolve it just at this and move on if the staff has something completed on this particular effort.
If I could finish my thought on this, on Mary Lee's document, please, because there were items 3, 4, 5, and 6, and some of those are relatively short topics, and really the gist was this global engagement strategies, which, we did talk about at our budget hearing quite a bit, and frankly, I mean, it would be interesting to sit down and talk with our economic development people on, what's going on out there in terms of our office space. How is it getting old? What do we need to be looking at? Because there's a lot of things happening in Central Ohio with respect to the economy, and there's a lot of players out there. And the hallmark of our city has always been that we are out there leading edge. And I think this is very vital and since we rely on that corporate income, those payroll taxes, to support all these wonderful things we do, it strikes me that this is something that we really ought to have a good handle on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the key to the city is the balance between residential and commercial tax base. And with like tonight where we had 3 different applicants come in with housing, which is cash flow out, where are we at in this understanding? P&Z used to do an excellent job of trying to balance that checking book to make sure the town was always viable, but I don't know if we're still in that kind of process any longer. So it's probably up to us to make sure that the tax base is keeping up with kind of expectations of the taxpayer here. So that's what's really interests me. And I agree with number 1 in the Bridge Street corridor. We would never find that out yet until April or May when they conclude a study. But I'm still sort of curious on where we are financially. I agree with you.
I mean, this global strategy to me is it's more than just looking at what people are doing today. It's really setting the groundwork going forward.
I also wanted to say that regarding that global or economic development, as Amy was calling it, I'm not interested, personally, I'm not interested in knowing every little activity that we're doing. I'm talking strategy here.
Yeah.
And what is our future strategy on ensuring that you have the balance in the taxation that you need? And then what is the role of council in supporting whatever that strategy is? I don't feel comfortable with knowing what the strategy is. And as we all know, as Rick was pointing out, there is very aggressive competition with us now that we didn't see 10, 15 years ago. So for us as the elected body to better understand the strategy, then we have a better opportunity to be verbalizing that to people in the community and to people we see. So, I think it's the big thinking kind of concepts, and whether global's the right word, or I use that because I think that was the term used here, but it is a different, in a way it is a different dialogue than economic development is in and of itself in the traditional sense, so I'm not sure which word's the best word, but it's that big strategy thinking that includes global, but also attends to who's here now. And the retention and what is necessary to ensure that retention and growth of our core base who is really already here.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement on that. And staff, Marcia, do you believe you have sufficient direction and you understand what we're looking for?
Yeah, I think we do, and Dana and I will have some conversations, and if we need to have any additional follow-up, we will do that.
Okay.
Could I offer something?
Yeah, please.
Okay. There was a lot of discussion a week ago tonight, surrounding our Bridge Street District meeting, and a lot of, I don't know if it's, I don't want to overstate it, but concern or comments expressed with respect to the financing, of the three major initiatives that we were talking about in the Bridge Street District. And, for lack of a more, articulate description, whether that would tap us out. And so I guess I'm interested in, it seems to me, our ability to even consider underwriting, if you will, some of these improvements, these major infrastructure improvements, as the result of good planning and having funds and reserves so that we can take advantage of opportunities like this. But having said that, speaking of the library, speaking of I-270, 33-161, speaking of, if we were to ever revisit 33-161 Post Road, would we have the ability to do that? So I guess, and, I don't know whether it's worth having a discussion to, prioritize those things, although it strikes me that, that's going to be more of an opportunity. The marketplace is going to determine, what if, any of those things, well, I guess more with respect to the Post Road area, the I-270, 33-161, we're, putting some money up, for that. But in order for that project to progress, are we going to have the necessary funds, to keep pushing the ball down the field, so to speak, if we do all these things in the Bridge Street District? So I'm just...
Well, I think, in part, that's the capital budget process, and part of what we do each year, and looking at what's coming up and what needs to be done, and recognizing that each year there are things that get adjusted or changed. But if that's something that prior to the meetings with council in the summer on the next 5-year plan, if you want something that helps you better understand how we go about determining those things and whether we do have funding available and where all the sources are, that would be something we could provide and include in the goal setting.
Well, it certainly makes sense that it's a matter of timing, so let me ask you this. What's the timing with respect to the decision you're looking for from council, regarding these Bridge Street District projects? Is that, is council, are you going to be coming to council looking for us to make, conclusive determinations with respect to those three major items sometime before the budget?
Potentially, the report that's coming out at the end of April will address or have discussions related to that, and based upon the information that we have from the engineering standpoint and how the public and the private improvements work together, that information should be included, or at least a good part of it included in that report.
So then I guess, I mean, this is for discussion, but I mean, based upon the comments that I heard last Monday, are we going to be informed with respect to, or is it?
These other pieces that are
these other
out
pieces,
there
is this going to
besides
be this
Bridge.
narrow, we're looking at that, when we get to the budget, we're going to find out that, well, this doesn't make the 5-year, cycle because we used it all up on the Bridge Street district. And maybe that's the decision we'll make.
Tim, I was hoping with the report that we're expecting here in the next 30, 40 days, that we could take that report and in some sort of work session among ourselves, begin to ask those type of financial questions. And with the guidance of Angel and the rest of Marcia and her staff, it would be to help us with that, so we could begin to formulate, our policies, our ideas, and even leading up to the CIP this August.
This is an outside of goal-setting discussion?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was thinking too, because one of the things that, when I'm hearing you list all these projects that we've, been talking about forever, is that there are certain projects that we're not exclusively the only decision maker in. So, as you present the ultimate, here's all your opportunities in life, and here's how much money you have, that has to be taken into consideration in our ultimate decision-making, which at a retreat, we're not going to have that information if we have our retreat in a timely manner, so that we would have an exclusive session, it would seem to me, a work session that would be devoted to the topic you've raised, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we can do all that and satisfy the timing issues with respect to Bridge Street?
Yeah, I think so, and it's one of those things that as we continue to move forward through the Bridge Street process, that if we have to have additional meetings to have those discussions, that's when we'll request that of council to provide you with the updates.
Okay.
I think we're all really concerned on that issue, Marcia, and I think tapping us out is a good term, because we just have so many different projects of such huge scope, and
We have a lot of big decisions.
and the tens of millions of dollars, and I think all of us are a little, we need to know a sequence of time as each one comes due, and what our financial situation is in each one of those years or months, so that we can make some clear decisions.
Yeah, and we recognize that, we have several significant projects and in different parts of the city that we're involved in right now. So, and that's part of looking at the fiscal analysis on Bridge Street overall, and then looking at our other funding sources and ability to do all of the critical projects that will then trigger additional development, which triggers the additional revenue to support.
Say it's like a
support the
chicken and an egg, sort
Yeah,
of.
sometimes.
But,
Yeah.
as soon as one project is approved and somebody takes a shovel and puts it in the ground, I think that's when the real action begins, And I think that in and of itself will create.
I think
That's
so.
what we hope.
Well, I don't think we're talking about today, but we can't until we know how that market develops.
Right.
After that first project.
I mean, interestingly, we talk about City Hall or location for City Hall, and I'm not, that seems
Yeah,
way
way
down
down.
here. I mean, anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with you on that one.
Okay, so what I think I hear everyone saying is that we should begin the day with goal review, perhaps over breakfast, so we can dive into the economic development strategy and the future of our economic development strategy, both globally and locally. And then that would take us up into the lunch hour, most likely. And then maybe we come back and work on the parks and recreation and the next generation parks. And I guess the reason I personally would prefer to do this in a goal-setting sort of in a retreat setting, I should say, is because I believe we need to think big, and we always do some really good thinking in our goal-setting environment. And I think, we get into work session mode, and it's much more mechanical, if you will, versus our dreaming big and thinking big. And I think this has always been a hallmark of our city, our parks, our recreation opportunities, and our culture. And, lately with our public art program becoming more and more prominent in our city and more of a focus, it seems to me that that is something that does rise to a goal-setting environment, but certainly I'm one of 7, so.
Well, Amy, as you know, I agree with you, and I'm not talking about details. I'm talking about what it should be, setting a goal, saying we need to do this or this. I'm not saying that we're going to say we need a climbing wall or we need this or this, but I think it needs to be included somehow as a goal where we want to go.
Right, and that will empower staff to start thinking big and different. So anyway, I don't know how the rest of council feels about that. Tim, Marilee, John, Rick, somebody needs to weigh in here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's fine. I just don't see it as a real long conversation.
No,
I don't
not
either.
necessarily.
Hour at most, maybe or
I think
whatever.
that's what Mary Lee suggested
Yeah.
down there. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely not real long.
Yeah.
Okay, and then talking about the charter review, that's a quick, probably 30, 45-minute discussion.
25.
Okay, to even decide if that's something
Maybe
that we're
5.
interested in. And then maybe finish the day talking about city's personnel resources, talk about the city manager evaluation and objective. And it was always my anticipation that that discussion would flow out of our goal-setting discussion, and that would, those strategic initiatives would be naturally what would be goals for the city manager,
There's
so.
a method to your madness.
Yeah, sometimes there is.
Very wise.
There's one thing I would like to ask that I believe, and I'm not for sure, if Steve or the law department could provide us the information about the process of the charter review and all the little details. I think if we read those over ahead of time, we can say yay or nay, and let's move on.
We're actually working on a memo right now. on
Okay, if we have
mechanics
that
of it.
written down, I think it would be a very short session on that.
Amy, you don't mind.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we talk about parks, we talk about the charter, and then we finish the day talking about city's personnel resources. Does that sound like a plan, everyone? Did we miss anybody's favorites?
Fantastic.
Okay, and then, Marcia, I think you heard us saying that we're looking forward to some study sessions on some
Yes.
off Mondays going forward in the next several months, and hopefully those are some good discussions, and I think it'll be very productive, and I'm looking forward to that. Okay.
And a date.
Date, well, I think it was the consensus that we did need an outside facilitator, just because it would be very difficult, I think, for anyone on staff to try to manage us, given their, we need somebody impartial and sort of outside of the process and outside of the outcome. Julia Novak was suggested. Sarah preliminarily reached out to her firm and found that she is available on April 26th. I think that would be my preference. I don't know if anybody else, we have 2 dates on the calendar of her availability, so I don't know, for lack of better direction, or how do those work out for you guys?
Sooner than later,
Right, and
because
that's,
it really impacts budget development and everything else.
right.
I'm available the 26th.
Are you available?
We all would have, Rick. That was not possible. Okay, so we'll shoot for April 26th. Sarah, if you can make the appropriate contacts, and then
Venue?
in terms of venues, I don't know, does anyone feel strongly, or can we turn that over to staff? Or I know Kathy had some thoughts about
Well,
that.
yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting, somebody brought up the idea of Wendy's. Did I see that in somebody's comments?
I had
think
done
you
that.
did.
Okay, and I'm wondering what that would be like at Wendy's, because I know they have a great break room, but I'm curious, compared to Corzon, which I have no clue, it just sounded nice, but what, what Wendy's would be like in term of comfort levels.
Wendy's has a heck of a new
Yeah.
boardroom, which I
Yeah.
think we'll all
Yeah.
see Thursday,
Yep.
if you were interested in that.
We certainly could check. The one thing is that we need to ensure public access since it's a public meeting.
Okay. I kind, before we make final decision, I sure like to see what that was.
Well, you
Okay.
can see it Thursday night.
We can see it Thursday night.
I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You come early for your tour.
Anyway,
I
Sarah, I
will.
think we were looking for someplace where we could have some, more informal, as opposed to being around a boardroom table, and have some areas where we could be a little more comfortable, similar to Spark Space like we had last year. That was conducive to good discussion, I think most of us believed.
If I could add, somebody made the suggestion, the villas at Muirfield. And, I remember years ago, back before they were remodeled, we had some events in there. I mean, I was thinking of less formal and more comfortable and so forth. And
Yeah, and we'd have to look to see, I'm not sure with their construction, what issues there would be. I mean, we can check.
Well, they're not reconstructing the villas.
Right, but the construction in
Right.
the area.
I'm sure they have lots of equipment and so forth.
Yeah, that might be a good place for next year's goal setting. I don't know. Okay. All right, so I think are you comfortable with our direction? Okay, thank you, everyone, for your participation in all elements of this. I think we're going to have a good retreat, as always.
Well, then staff. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay? Moving right along, roundtable, Rick? Okay. Kathy?
I thought there was two. When we agreed with that plat, there was one thing about the no-build zones that said, Mr. Hart said, given the fact that it is backed up to a city park, it seemed to cause no harm. Having said that, we have mentioned several times that people need to understand where the park begins and their yard ends. So I don't know if it's important to point that out on the plat, that, our restrictions. Sometimes we put little footnotes at the bottom of the plat, but somehow make sure that the people who are backing up to a city park are absolutely sure positively that no play equipment should encroach on our property.
Isn't that the Metro Park?
Red Trabue, I think.
Parks. It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
matter who owns
yeah,
it.
yeah, it doesn't matter, whatever kind of park it is,
Right.
it's not
Don't even-
their land. So I would appreciate any help in that.
Sure.
Kathy?
Thank
Kathy.
you. Oh,
Acknowledge it.
Claudia. Hi.
No, I was just going to say that even though the no-build zone was lessened in depth, that there was still a zone in which none of those things could take place. There was still a
Okay.
distance from the park.
So the no-build zone, we're no longer, but the no-disturb zone, we can put swing sets in.
No, it's the other way around.
Okay. The no-disturb zones, we can or cannot.
Cannot.
And the no-build zones, we can.
Because they're temporary.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, I know we went through it quite a bit. Oh, I did have one other thing. Steve, I've got to say, this post-preserve entry feature, I don't know if I was in a fog when I read it, but I certainly came out going like, I don't understand. Was the answer yes or no to our question based on this report?
I think the answer was supposed to be no.
Thank you. Because all I understood was that we didn't have enough staff at the time. And I'm
Sorry,
going.
what was that again?
Pardon me?
What was that again?
The only thing I concluded out of this was that we didn't have enough staff at the time for inspection, so I didn't really understand if the answer was yes or no about the developer completing what he was supposed to complete on this landscaping for post-preserve entry feature.
None of us were here when that happened, so I don't know exactly what happened at the time, but the only history we were able to find was that when the plan was initially submitted, it was submitted underneath the easement, and they prohibited us from actually putting the pond into easement. So we had to take the pond out of the easement, and we did that through administrative approval. But once the pond went through the easement, it kind of cascaded some of the landscaping accordingly. But the same amount of material was used
Okay,
as required.
okay.
And they're not using the money from the grant to do something the developer should have done.
Okay.
That's not the case.
Okay, thank you. I am done.
Thank you. Mayor Lee?
I've had a number of people ask me a question regarding the water tower at the bogey, behind the bogey there. Is it supposed to be a golf ball, and what is the painting going to, how are we painting this?
Well, it's not supposed to be a golf ball. I
'cause
mean,
that's
it's
what it
similar
looks
to the tower that's built over by Tartan Ridge. I mean, it is in the shape, it does have that shape, but that's not the intent. As far as the painting scheme, we haven't finalized that. It's based upon our current discussions. We would have our typical scheme, looking at, are there any options that we could do to potentially put something on the tower temporarily related to President's Cup. But we currently have not had any discussions about painting it something other than our typical paint that we would put on.
And what is the time frame for completion?
I think it's sometime around the August timeframe. Is that it, Dean? Yeah, August.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I had attended the Dublin Arts Council reception last week for the new art that is up for a couple months, and it's really terrific, and I really encourage everybody to go by. Kathy was there as well, and they, as you know, you may know from the garden party, they have a relationship with Blue and Fig, who is a catering company, and they, Blue and Fig have put together a terrific catering program specific to the Arts Council building and use, and they are particularly interested in the Memorial Tournament and a President's Cup for people to use it during that time frame as an alternative way of entertaining your guests. So I'll leave this here for the city to have it, but encourage anybody to recommend DAC as an alternative to a location to entertain corporate people and all. Also, I wanted to congratulate the Board of Education, and everybody I'm sure saw the article of the new superintendent that'll be starting this summer. Looks highly qualified, and I like his diverse background that he's going to come with possibly ideas to continue our great excellence that we have in our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
The quarterly Dublin Arts Council meeting that I am now party to that you've requested, I just want to give you a quick summation of what occurred on March 8th, 2013. The Culture Now update is very interesting. It's a Cultural Now program. Dublin is one of the 41 cities in the United States that is now part of the Museum Without Walls. We're the only one in Ohio. This is a worldwide database that's going to display our art, show our art. You'll be able to get it on your iPhone and your Android here in a little bit. It's not quite up. The second item is the grants. There was $15,200 in grants given out. $7,800 was given out last year. Basically, it was Dublin City Schools, the Music Boosters, and the Dublin Singers. And the third major item probably is that we are going to have food carts paired with music this year at the summer Sundays at the Scioto concert series, and we'll be taking a percentage, hopefully, of the proceeds from the food carts to help the Dublin Arts Council. And that's the update.
Okay.
Excellent. That'll be a wonderful day.
Amy?
The only thing that I wanted to lift up to council was the tree waiver issue that I discussed earlier, so that's all I have. Thank you for everyone's participation in our goal-setting process.
I don't want to belabor the point, but you asked about the water tower. I would just ask us to be careful and sensitive, given the discussion regarding its location, and, that we utilize it. I mean, I know we have this great event coming here, but that we utilize the water tower to the extent we're considering it, that we do so respectfully and as we would, you know, if it was located somewhere else. And also, just as an aside, the Best Legs in a Kilt contest occurred, it moved to the Brazen Head this last Thursday. I don't know if any of you were able to be there. Is the video up yet? Okay. Okay. You know, I think I made a wise choice not to participate for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you've seen my legs. Number two, it was pretty cold. There was still snow on the ground. But the participants were very enthusiastic. I would not have medaled or placed, I'm certain. No, they were really, really good. So it was a nice way to kick off the season, so to speak. And things were just hopping downtown that night for the weather. You know, considering the weather, the parking lot up top was full. We had a trolley operating that evening and so forth, so it was pretty impressive. Garth Bishop.
Okay.
Okay. And he sang, as I recall, fairly well, I thought, and there was the usual bribing of the judges and so forth, and so, you know, it was a fun event. But in any event, our parade is this Saturday. I haven't seen the weather report out that far.
Not good.
Not good? Oh, well.
Some years it's wonderful and some years it's not.
Heated trolley. Anyway, you know, hopefully people will be just as enthusiastic as they were for the Best Legs in a Kilt. And with that said, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.